is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated.
Cam Newton, fight manager. Oh, what do I mean? Next on Total Football Talk. Welcome to Total Football Talk. Hard-hitting, grind action, news, and fun, just the way you like it. I am one of the co-hosts of this program, Cole Johnson, a.k.a. the Mad Scientist and EP Extraordinaire. And I'm joined, as always, by the other co-host of this program. Let me see, Mr. Commander's Gridiron Report, Mr. In or Out Sports Debate, Mr. D. Willie in the Evening, which will make its return soon. And he is the man in charge of the D. Willie Bucks. D. Willie, a.k.a. Drew Willingham. How you doing, my man?
Hey, I'm doing great out here, brother. Thank you again, as always, as we have got one great show. And to answer that intro, this Sunday, 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time on Sertoba Media, you can find D. Willie in the Evening's premiere for Season 2.
So when it turns to March, that's when it happens. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. Nice.
Especially when the title is Christmas Lights in March. If this house still has the lights up, I will find it. I'm going to go double check this Friday. If they have the Christmas lights up, the title will be Christmas Lights in March.
Oh, Lord. So, yeah, tune in to the Sertoba Media YouTube channel for D. Will in the Evening for the beginning of, and I'm going to say this like my brother does it, of Season Mother Fathering 2.
New promo inspired by Cole Johnson to come out in 2 days as well for that.
Oh Lord,
I've been working on it. I've even been working on a voiceover for it too. Like that's scary. It's not as good as Cole Johnson, but I tell you what, I think it gets an A for effort. You guys have to let me know here on Thursday.
Well, hopefully we'll give you that grade that you seek. Oh, did I say grade? Well, speaking of grades, opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Great.
And before we issue our grades, let's give a what's up and a hello to the TFT tribe. Mickey, what is up? Yes, right. Let's do this. I'm glad to see you. Sig Diggy. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to you, sir. He says, ladies and gentlemen, let the throwdown begin. And then my man Ike, yo, what's up, man? I hope everything's good with you. He says, morning, fellas.
What's up, Ike?
And of course, he gives that good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night greeting as he always does. And Mickey gives a hello to Sig Diggy. Well, I did say grades. We're going to throw grades onto the North divisions of the AFC and NFC. And we're going to start with the NFC first. So let us begin with the Chicago Bears. So they, of course, finished their season at 7-10. They technically brought up the rear in the division. But they had some, even though with their offense sputtering and doing good at times and spattering some more and playing with and without Justin Fields, it still lacked punching weapons. However, some good things did happen. As Montez Sweat was acquired from a trade mid-season, and the defense was so horrendous, he led the team in sacks for the year with only a half a season under his belt with the Bears. And he led the Commanders with sacks for the season too, but we're not talking about the NFC East. Now, Matt Eberflus, who was being clowned everywhere and every which way but Sunday, gained some support with the end of the season push that they had. And Justin Fields, we saw some improvement, we saw some regression, and seemingly the team is not all the way sold on Justin Fields being that man for the rest of this decade and going into the 2030s. All right, so your thoughts on the Bears and the grade that you give them, sir?
Overall, looking at where they were to start the season and how they finished, I think I'd have to give them a C minus. I don't want to rank them too low, and I don't want to, of course, give them too high of a ranking either. But when I look at this team as a whole, I mean, that trade for Montez Sweat definitely changed my overall look on this team by the end of the year. And, you beat me to it with talking about the fact that Montez Sweat not only led the franchise that he was traded for in sacks in a short period of time, but he led the other franchise that he came from. Not often that you have a player lead in a statistic like that, especially a statistic that's very hard to rack up numbers like that for. So between those two franchises, Montez Sweat was like the superhero between the two ailing franchises in 2023. But, looking at this team overall, I mean, 7-10 record. Yes, the offense still lacks the punch and weapons like you were talking about. And they're going to be making some moves in this offseason, whether it's the free agency or the draft, because there's a lot of pieces throughout a lot of different positions, a lot of skill positions that you can make an impact in both free agency and trades, as I was talking about yesterday on the one-off February episode of the Commander's Gridiron Report and what they could potentially be making moves in free agency for. But looking right here in this division, the Bears' biggest question is that quarterback position. You got people on the team like DJ Moore and other players speaking out highly on Justin Fields and the fact that they don't want to see him change that position. They more than likely, rather than see them use that pick on like Marvin Harrison Jr. or someone that can make a big impact towards the offensive production. But I think it would be a waste if they drafted and used that pick on a quarterback, because Justin Fields, he has had some issues since he came into the league, but he's been a better option at quarterback than what they had prior to that, like Mitch Trubisky and the others that have come since like Rex Grossman and Jay Cutler and the issues that the Bears have had over there.
Gosh.
But 7-10 for their final record to end the season was a bit more respectful. I would say respectable for them to finish that way, considering the way things went to start. I mean, I think the Montez Sweat trade saved some jobs by the end of this season. So it's how they build on that momentum from those moves in 2023 in this offseason that'll tell a good tale. But I would say, for now, for what they did this past season, I would give them a C minus.
C minus. Okay. That's not a bad grade. Mickey gives them a C. I'm sort of it's C, but I don't know if it's C or C minus for me. All right, I'll go with you. I'll say C minus. And the reason why I think the Montez Sweat trade did it for me. I think we actually got a chance to see the Bears turn the corner and actually have the identity that they used to have when you were a twinkle in your mom's eye and I was a teenager. I mean, we were starting to see a team that was built on defensive intensity and all the offense getting the job done virtually on the ground. Although, they had DJ Moore. Let's be honest, that team offensively is Justin Fields going buck wild on the ground or bust. And that has to change. And toward the end of the season, we saw some glimpses of Justin Fields doing well. And we saw the defense tightening up. But that should be how it would be, because Matt Eberflus's specialty is defense. Of course, we didn't know that until the end of the season, because we pretty much figured that he was going to be a lame duck for this year. And I totally agree with you. In Montez Sweat saving jobs, he saved Matt Eberflus's mostly. But yes, I give the Bears a C minus. It was headed toward an F real fast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
That trade saved him.
Yeah, that trade. Yeah, the Montez Sweat trade. That's what saved them. Now we go from the Bears to the Vikings, who also finished their season at 7-10, and they even took well, let me do this correctly, and they even took an to their division rival Bears, 12-10, at home. And speaking of at home, they had a better record on the road, 5-4, than at home, 2-6. And they had a lot of issues. They regressed from 2022 when they were the NFC North champs and they finished 13-4, and they decided to be this short in converting a fourth down in a wild card loss to the Giants last year. I digress. After a slow start from Kirk Cousins, he turned on the burners and had the team at 4-4, and then he got injured for the rest of the season. And because of that, oh gosh, I mean, what's he? Hader, Dobbs, I mean, just you name it. They had issues with one quarterback after another, and the slide continued with the revolving door of QBs. Your thoughts on this team and the record that you would and the grade that you would give them?
You know, the fact that they finished 7-10 is, you know, in some cases that people would say it'd be a miracle, considering that carousel of quarterbacks you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It really speaks volumes on the coaching over there. And you and I have talked about that, you know, throughout the second half of that season, you know, that we're recapping, because you know, not many coaches can keep it together to muster up 7 victories in a 17-game season with that type of, you know, turnover at the quarterback position. And the fact that they were in the playoff chase until very late in the season, I mean, it says one thing about the division, but it also says another about the fact that they still had the grit to stay with it in games. They weren't pretty. I mean, some of them were pretty ugly. The wins were ugly. The losses were, you know, they were close. But, you know, overall to make the trade, I mean, they brought in Dobbs. You know, of course, that really didn't work out in the way that they had hoped, considering, you know, what he had done for Arizona in the time that Kyler Murray was out. And he did a lot more with a lot less over there in Arizona. Right. I just think that the chemistry didn't really fit well with him in that system over there, Kevin O'Connell's system. No, but, you know, for them to do what they did without Kirk Cousins, the big question mark going into this offseason is what are they going to do with that quarterback position as well, just like we were talking about with the Bears, because Kirk Cousins is a free agent. So, you know, there's other teams that are going to be looking at potentially rendering his services. But for him, you know, it was pretty big downturn when he got hurt. And it wasn't right at the beginning, like when Aaron Rodgers got hurt on the fourth play into the first drive of the season. I mean, they started off pretty bad, the Vikings did, and Kirk Cousins willed them back to a 5-5 record when he got hurt. So they were at 500. They were already through 10 games, and then he goes down. And, you know, they did only get 2 wins in those last 7 games, but for them to even get back to the point to be at 500 that late in the season after that start speaks one on the volume. It speaks volumes on the coaching for one. Also the leadership on both sides of the ball, not because their defense was doing pretty well and was help keeping them in the games at certain points too. Yeah. So overall, when it comes to the Vikings, you know, I feel like I need to rank them similar to the Bears because of, you know, they had the same record to end the year for one. But at the same time, I feel like I need to rank them a little bit better because they, you know, did a lot more with a lot less in some cases. I think I'm going to have to go with a C. You know, not a C minus, but a C for the Vikings here. And that's based on mainly what we saw from the coaching to help keep them in it when the cards are stacked against them.
Man, we're thinking alike on this one because I was gonna give them a C as well, and reason being, yes, you had Jaron Hall, you had Joshua Dobbs, you had Nick Mullins, who went under center the second half of last year, and you had the stability of Kevin O'Connell. I think I'd actually say I think he did a better coaching job this year than last. Simply because, like you said, he did more with less, and the team did more with less. And this is a team that has a stud as a wide receiver in Justin Jefferson on one side, and probably a star to be born in KJ Osborne on the other. So you have some talent, and I think they may have some backfield talent too. So you're talking about a team that I don't think they're too far off. All they need to have is either a healthy Kirk Cousins or a healthy QB that can be in sync with the head coach who actually also is sound offensively and basically is the offensive coordinator du jour. If you have that continuity, I think the team will go further. And I think the team would have gone far this year if that injury with Cousins did not happen. But yeah, I say C as well. Because the D, I think they progressed just a bit from last year. So yeah, I give him credit. Ike says C minus for the Bears. He says A minus for the Vikings.
What?
Yes,
You might want to calm down that Folgers in your cup this morning there, Ike. I don't know about the A minus. You might be agreeing with the whole coaching. Maybe A minus for the coaching, but overall for the team, C. I might, if you were saying A minus coaching, I would probably lean a little bit more towards agreeance there. But if this is an overall grade, you got to calm down that Folgers in your cup, bro.
Oh, Lord. The best it's Folgers in your cup. I'm sorry, my bad.
Also, I got to give a quick shout out to this man right here that you just brought this up. So I'm getting ready this morning, right? Get out of the shower, look at my phone. Got a message from Sick Dicky. It's a video. It's the Kyle's Mom song from South Park.
Lord.
Rendered in a different fashion. And I got to say, the laugh that came from that was a great way to start the day. Thank you again, Sick Dicky, for the Kyle's Mom song. If any of you would like to see it, I can forward it to you.
Shout out to South Park. All right. Six says, truth be told, Justin Fields should leave the Bears. His knees and his career will thank him for it. Well, the problem with that is the way he has been coached up thus far, I don't think his knees will be thanking him because I think he'll be doing some of the similar things. Now, if he got under someone like, let's say, Andy Reid, then his knees would be thanking him. But for the most part, I think coaches will have him do what he's been doing with the Bears. That I don't like. Oh, and he says, as for the Minnesota Vikings, are you kidding me? Thank you, Paul Allen. Oh, my goodness. Ryan McCarthy of No Credentials Required fame. How you doing this morning, sir? He says, good morning, gentlemen. To be fair, the Vikings could have finished 7-10 in 2022 if they didn't have all those last drive wins. True, sir. True. Very true. Because to your point, sir, yes, they gave up more points. They gave us 3. But they gave up more points than they scored last year. But that also, I think that's accredited to someone like a Kirk Cousins who told the team, okay, well, let's not give up. Let's not give in. And let's get the W's. And so they got a lot of close W's and they had a couple of blowout L's. One to this team in particular, and it's disgusting when I think about it. Matt, come on, man, come on.
Delete.
Is that Tyrone Alizé McDummy?
Tyrone Alizé McDummy. I love it.
Well,
I love it.
To kind of touch up with what we were just talking about with McCoffey's comment right there, you hit the nail right on the head. Usually when you have a team that ends the year with a 7-10 record, or I mean, even better than that, and they have scored less points than what was put up against them, is usually exactly what you were saying with, those wins were really tight, were really close, like sometimes field goal or less. And then their losses were like, 10, 13 points or more, on average. So for you to be able to pull that off, to have 7 wins when you have that type of a deficit when it comes to the scores put up versus against, This
Mhm.
definitely speaks volumes again on the way that this coaching helped lead this team towards something
Mhm.
that remarkable with the 4 quarterbacks going through there, especially in the last 7 weeks.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the positive going into 2024 for the Vikings is I think they found their coach in Kevin O'Connell for at least the next 5 years because of the job he did this past year. I think they're solidified with him being the guy leading their team on the field. Mickey also gives the Vikings a C. Oh, and Ryan says that is not Folgers in his cup, Drew. That's whiskey.
And that's not even Bailey's.
Oh Lord.
And that's not even Bailey's Irish Cream, bro. That's that hard stuff. I don't know.
Oh Lord. Thank you, sick. Lord have mercy. Oh, why do I entertain these people? We come to the Green Bay Packers. So they had they finished season 9-8. They had a real sluggish, slow start to the season. But the youngest team in the NFL this year caught fire in mid-November and I think it's really sparked with their impressive Thanksgiving showing in Detroit. And they just took that momentum, bulldozed everybody that they had to play in front of them all the way to the playoffs. And then they took that momentum. And then this guy. Was
Delete!
40-32 was the final score, but it was 48-16 with 6 minutes to go in the game. I will stress that again, Cowboys fan. It was 48-16 with 6 minutes to go with your Kang looking horrible. And I ain't talking to LeBron James. I'm sorry. So 48-32 in the wild card round, they beat the Cowboys. But in controlling the divisional round matchup they had in Santa Clara, they took the L 24-21. Oh, and that wild card game, they made history. This 9-8 squad and its 7th seed in the NFC. They're the first 7th seed in the NFL playoffs to beat a number 2 seed. So this young team made history. Your thoughts? Oh, and then you had Jordan Love to start off very slow, but he really did pick up his game as the team picked up theirs, and he had a spectacular wild card round where he played a perfect game and when the team needed him to play a perfect game the most. Your thoughts on the Packers and the grade?
If this was just the regular season, I think I would grade it a little bit differently, but because we're doing the entire season, I feel like it elevates this team more because of what they did in the playoffs, because they were getting better each and every week. And even when they were eliminated in the playoffs, they still had a chance to advance. So it wasn't like they were decimated or embarrassed on that stage. Nobody expected the Packers for one to have the success that they did this year, to have a winning record. Yeah, it was only one game over 500, but I feel like it still exceeded expectations from what most people, even us, saw at the beginning of the season. Neither you nor I were discussing the Packers in the way that they developed towards the end of the season, and especially how they got in the playoffs.
100.
So looking back on the entire season as a whole, the previous 25 episodes we've done before today and what we had discussed about the Packers with Jordan Love's production, definitely sitting behind Aaron Rodgers helped him out, I feel like, in a little bit more of a way than what Rodgers sitting behind Favre did during that time when he first started with the Packers. Even though he was sitting behind a living legend in Favre, I feel like Aaron Rodgers spent a little bit more time helping Love out behind closed doors, developing him, in preparation. You can't really develop somebody and what they produce on the field. That's up to them to develop themselves with all the knowledge they have around them to acquire. But helping him in preparation and getting ready at this stage, you can tell, he was light years ahead of the original 1 year starter. Well, even if they were sitting behind somebody for a year or two, somebody coming off the bench, sitting behind someone, the only other person that I know that had success like this coming off the bench behind somebody like this in recent time was probably Patrick Mahomes, because what he did after coming off the bench with Alex Smith and producing, even though the Packers, if they get to the Super Bowl this year, then we can start talking to him potentially in similar retrospects than what Patrick Mahomes was like in his second year as a starter.
Mhm.
But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves with that yet. When it comes to this team overall, I feel like I'm going to rank them higher, and probably I can't rank them much higher because we got the other team to talk about in this division. I think I'm going to go ahead and give them a B for their grade. I didn't want to go any higher, didn't want to go any lower, but I feel like the respectable grade here would be a B. Had it been what they did just in the regular season, it probably would have garnered them a C plus, or a B minus at most. But because of what they did, with Tyrone Alizé over there, Mr. Tyrone Alizé McDummy, him and his video with the Cowboys, you eliminated him. And that's what you did, Jordan Love. Yes. Tam. Oh, Tam with his initials. Tam. Yeah, we're going to call him Tam, Tyrone Alizé McDummy. But yeah.
Tam. Oh, Tam. Tam. Tam, get him face now. I'm sorry, my bad.
But yeah, you get for eliminating the Tams of the world, you get a B there, Green Bay Packers.
Man, well, Mickey is in agreement with you. He says he gives Packers a B. I do too, and for the same reasons you listed. If they were just straight 9-8, and we'll talk about a team that went 9-8 and did not go to the playoffs momentarily. But the fact that this team, youngest in the league, they get into the playoffs, they act as though they had nothing to lose, and they beat a team that people were clamoring to actually. And yes, there were many who were clamoring for the Cowboys to get to the NFC Championship game. Many were clamoring for this team to get there. Many were prognosticating for them to get there, and made them look silly on their own home field. Made them look absolutely silly. And then they go to Santa Clara, and they controlled that game. Let's be completely forthright. They controlled that game. The 49ers by the skin of their teeth, and yes, I'd say this if our brother were here, who is an uber 49ers fan. The 49ers escaped by the skin of their teeth because their youth and inexperience caught up with them at the tail end of that game, where they were up 4 and they missed the field goal. And then the 49ers, with about 6 minutes going in the game, and the 49ers charged down the field, scored a touch with McCaffrey, and then Love throws a pick when they could have driven down to tie the score with a field goal to send in overtime. If it wasn't for this team's inexperience, we would be talking about them in a different light, even with the playoff journey. But they needed to go through those bumps because they're still learning. The fact that they were a team that just looked all out of sorts, and people were talking about, well, I guess Matt LaFleur is not the genius that he was. That was a talk that people were saying about him in early November. But the tune changed about him 2 months later. And then it changed quick and fast. And so now we're actually seeing a team that may have reloaded instead of rebuilt with what you just said. It looked like Aaron Rodgers did teach Jordan Love more than we thought, more than we saw, and more than we realized. Because there was a lot of times they were actually showing clips, Fox was and NBC was, about Jordan Love and certain throws he made. It's like, yeah, doesn't this throw look familiar? And they had Brett Favre. They went in the archives and pulled a throw that Brett Favre threw, and basically like back foot darts down the field. So they showed Brett Favre when he would throw on his back foot and throw darts down the field, and they showed Aaron Rodgers back foot throwing darts down the field. So you have a QB that's young, that's growing, and you have a wide receiver core that's young and that's growing. And you have a defensive core that is unheralded, really. People really haven't talked much about them, and they really held their own. They really did. And I think you have LaFleur to thank, and I think you have Aaron Jones, the running back, to thank, because I think those two infused the confidence of the rest of the team, saying, you could do this. You all may be the youngest team in the NFL, but you could do this. You could do this. And somehow, and I know this message had to happen right before Thanksgiving, they bought in. They bought in. They were a different team. Love matured. The team matured with them. And now we're talking about this team possibly challenging the Lions for the NFC North crown because they're young. They advanced one round into the playoffs, and they may have arrived sooner than we thought. Oh, Sick. Oh, Lord. Sick says, Cole, it's best if you got a dump on Victor Locke, V-Lock-A3, or should I say
Victor.
You
and
know,
he's not here. But I'm not going to stop. Get down with your bad self. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
when it comes to this team right here, I have one more thing to add.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually has to deal with Vicala. So while we have this take in this video, let's do this.
Let me talk to you.
When it comes to our man, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for this, but the moment when the Packers served that to Tyrone Alizé McDummy and the Cowboys fan nation, I absolutely love that moment, and it's a moment you cannot take away from any of us who hate on the Cowboys and Tyrone Alizé McDummy.
Delete! 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 Delete!
I rest my case.
Oh, Lord. Lord, why? Oh, my. Tam. And then we get to the NFC North champion, the Detroit Lions. Wow. They finished at 12-5, but basically they sort of coasted throughout the season. I mean, they had their moments where they had the impressive wins, like the opening night win in Arrowhead. And so they had those moments, and then they had the moments where they took some head-scratching L's, and then they got thumped hard a couple of times. One that I remember when they played in Baltimore being the case. But they stayed the course, and they learned the lessons they learned from the previous year, applied it to this year, and they just simply charged forward. What I loved about this team the most, their offense was balanced and their defense was starting to get better. Coming into this year, they were saying that the secondary was just killing the Lions. That you had up front in Aiden Hutchinson, the guy in the future for the future that you could build a defense around. So you had pass rushing, and you had a little bit of run stopping ability. But when it came to stopping the pass, forget about it. That was the talk, and then they upgraded in the offseason and got some pieces to help out in the secondary, and they actually grew as a defense to be better. So you had balance on both sides of the ball, and you had the special teams too that was willing to, gamble and succeed with some of the aggressive play calling. Which takes me to Dan Campbell, who was uber aggressive in game managing. I mean, there was times that he would go on fourth downs within his own territory and actually succeed. And we'll mention a couple of plays. Well, I'll mention this one play since we're talking regular season right now, where he had a chance in Arlington to grab the number 2 seed in the NFC. He scored a touchdown to put them down 20-19, and they had a successful 2-point conversion, which was flagged. And I will say right now, it was a wrong flag. But I digress. Instead of lining up for the extra point, he decides to go for 2 twice more and failed. One was a penalty, the other, the try, didn't go through. So they were robbed of the number 2 seed. They ended up getting number 3, but it didn't matter in the long run because they defeated the Rams in the wildcard round, the best game in the wildcard round, I may add, 24-23, which gave them their first win at home in the playoffs in 32 years. But then they followed that up with another home win 7 days later to the Bucks in the divisional round, 31-23. And to me in that game, what was impressive was the Bucks hung around for 2 quarters and a half, and the Lions actually had that killer instinct of this team doesn't belong with us, and they buried them starting the very first minute of the fourth quarter. So I saw a killer instinct with this team, and then they had a 17-point lead, which was whittled down to 14 in Santa Clara, third quarter against the 49ers, when the decision that Dan Campbell going for it resulted in an but the Lions actually was still in the game.
That was a lie.
Well, what ended up happening was the 49ers went on a run where they turned a 24-10 deficit into a 34-24 lead. It ended up being 34-31, and the 49ers eliminated the Lions in the NFC Championship game, which that was the first time they went that far in 32 years. Your thoughts on the number 3 seed in the NFC and the grade you give them?
I mean, with that last part that you threw out there, the first time they've advanced that far in 32 years, I mean, speaks volumes to how bought in this team is on Dan Campbell's philosophy. I mean, I got to quote our guy Kyle Nash, who calls that coach Man Campbell because he is all man talking about going in there, biting kneecaps, going there in the trenches, getting down low, doing what you got to do to protect your quarterback and protect your team and advance in the best way you know how. This team right here is something special. It's something that we've been seeing brewing for the past few seasons since Dan Campbell came in and took over at the head coaching position. I mean, looking at this team and what they produced, they were 12-5 during the regular season, and they were definitely cooking and firing on all cylinders throughout the entirety of the season and the playoffs until that, that moment in the NFC Championship where Man Campbell messed up and made those decisions that he made, in going for it on fourth down twice, like you had mentioned. And, the only thing that, you can kind of argue against that is that's been their identity since he's been there and been going for it on fourth down. And they wouldn't have gotten as far as they did into the NFC Championship had he not had that mentality. So, a lot of arguments were made in going against what we're saying here, talking about the fact that, had he given up on that and abandoned that then, had they lost, then you would have been shoulda, coulda, woulda. I should have gone back to my original game plan that got me here. So gambling got him as far as he did. He was trying to gamble his way to Vegas, and it didn't work out. And, unfortunately, the 49ers went and, put up a decent fight against the Chiefs. But I feel like we would have had maybe a better chance at an NFC victory in the Super Bowl if the Lions would have won that NFC Championship, because it's the team that everybody wanted to see go to the Super Bowl. But, the Lions' time could still come, or they could never get back as far as they did in our lifespan and go down another 30-year drought of doing what they did for the past 30 years. Hopefully not. I don't wish that ill will on anybody. But when it comes to what they did this year, they were the team to beat in this division. There was no other team in this division that did as well as the Lions, and there's probably not going to be many other teams that I'm going to rank this high on our grading scale each and every week. But based on what they did to get to the playoffs, and regardless if they made the Super Bowl or not, they still met expectations with getting to the NFC Championship game and making it a game. They lost, but it was a game because of the way that they played. I'm giving them an A+ this season.
An A+. Okay. A+. All right. Okay. All right. Well, I'll give you my grade in a second. Let me see. Ryan says, "Dear New York Jets, follow Drew's advice for the next QB you draft. Let them ride the pine and learn for at least 2 seasons instead of throwing them into the fire immediately. Signed, a fan."
Vic made it.
Oh, he did. Okay,
He did. Oh, man, Vic, you got to go back like 10, 15 minutes and see when we were talking about you and your fellow Cowboys Nation fans that I named Tyrone Alizé McDummy.
Tam. Oh, don't worry. We'll get to that. I gives the Lions a B+. Let me see. Lions or... No, I'm sorry. That's the Packers. He gives the Packers a B+. I'm sorry. 6 says, "Cole, I'll send you some clips by a YouTuber named Bathmaster. You'll love the humor." All right, I appreciate that, man. I look forward to it. Oh, and Nike loves the Tam.
Oh, sick.
6 says, "Oh, for a moment, I thought Tyrone Alizé McDummy was Terry Crews reprising his Cheeseburger Eddie character from The Longest Yard." Oh my gosh, I haven't seen that in a minute.
I'm gonna actually, you know what, Vic, don't worry about going back. I'm gonna have to clip that out. That out. I'll tag you in it on Facebook.
And speaking of the 49ers and 49ers fan, the Uber 49er fan that we know, our brother from another, Brian Snow, aka Snowman. He says, "2 of my faves. You guys mean the world to me." Well, we're glad that you're doing all right, my man. Hope everything is good with you in your world. And then we come to the man who is known as Victor Locke, aka V like A3, otherwise known as He says, "Good morning to the TFT tribe and a special good morning to the VP of all EPs, Cole Johnson, and the big game hunter of Dumpster Pelicans worldwide, Sensei Drew Willingham. How are we this morning? We're doing good, my man. I hope you're doing well. Oh, yes. Oh, and and from this point forth, this gentleman here."
Delete!
And for those of you just tuning in, if you're not aware, that man is now named Tyrone Alizé McDummy.
Tam. So yes, yeah. I love your name too of him. Victor of what was it? Tyrese Cisco McKnight. But Tyrone Alizé McDummy. It rolls off the tongue better, and then I can actually abuse it by just going Tam every time.
And that is, and the wild thing is that was not premeditated. I thought of that like in the moment, like it just came up. Tyrone Alizé McDummy it rolled off the tongue. Oh, great! This is the best part of waking up this morning. It was not folders; it was coming up with Tam.
Oh Lord. Oh, or as Ryan says, "The best part of waking up is whiskey in your cup."
Yeah, Ike, let us know how that goes.
Oh Lord. Ryan McCarthy says, quote, I got the shakes that'll make you quake. I got the fries that'll cross your eyes. I got the burgers that'll, well, I just got the burgers. Close quote. Oh, thank you, sir. Oh, and 6 says, oh, doesn't that fool kind of look like Terry Crews? Yeah. Oh, and Victor gives his endorsement. He says, I love it. I'll have to remember that one. Yeah, so just remember this guy here when you see him. When you see this guy singing. That dumpster pelican is now named Tam or Tyrone Alizé McDummy.
And you could have 33 dumpster pelicans in that picture. In the 32 behind you are actual NFL teams, but the number one dumpster pelican will forever and always be Tam.
Oh my gosh. Oh, 6 says all that's left is for an elbow from Michael Irvin in a game of pickup basketball. Oh my gosh. Oh, he says, my co-host Dunstan of No Credits Acquired. He calls him Dollar Store Usher. Tell him I love that name too. That is great. My grade for the Lions, I won't go A+, I'll go A-. And the reason why I won't go as high, look, they made history. This team even, I'll even say they're more successful than the 91 Lions squad. This is probably the most successful Lions squad since they won the NFL championship way back in 1957. I'll go that far because we're talking about 2 playoff victories and 2 home playoff victories at that. And 2 home playoff victories where let's be honest. And we'll talk about the Rams and we'll talk about the Rams in a couple of weeks, I think. That wasn't your normal average garden variety number 6 seed. So you had a team in the number 6 seed that some actually were saying they could have upended the Lions, and they played like they were going to. And then you had a Bucs team that I think was motivated to show that, yeah, we may have come from the NFC South, and then it may have been I can't, my words can't do it justice, but this can. The NFC South may have been a division this year, but we aren't dumpster fires ourselves. So you had 2 teams that came to Detroit, one to prove that they were better than what their record says or what their years went, how the years went. And the Lions met that challenge, like you said, so eloquently, sir. And they beat both challenges. Both of them were tough challenges, in my opinion, and they beat them. And then they had their best half of the season in the NFC Championship game. The first half of the NFC Championship game was the best half all season the Lions played, because the defense could not have played any better and the offense could not have been better. They were, oh gosh, it was beautiful. They were balanced. Speaking of balance, they kept the 49ers defense off balance. And then on the other side of the ball, the 49ers could not do anything against them. And then the gambling of Dan Campbell cost the team in the second half. Now, yeah, I agree with you. There are many who would say, well, if he were to have been more conservative, they probably would jump on him if they would have gone on to take the L. And they would have said, well, you're normally a gambler. Why were you conservative? Why were you scared? But Campbell, showing that he wasn't scared, he was like, we got here by rolling the dice. We're going to roll the dice some more. And sometimes when you roll the dice, you come up with 7s or 11s, and other times you come up with snake eyes. He just rolled 2 snake eyes in the NFC Championship game. One when they were up 14, and the other when they were down 3. And that happens. But I give them an A- because I give them a little room to improve. I think they had what it took to be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. And I would not have said that, though, And I think I started to say that about them actually in the game against the Cowboys in Arlington. I think that was the first time I actually started saying, "Oh, they could represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. They actually could." And they proceeded to prove they could, and then they played a bad second half. Oh Lord.
You saw Ike's comment? Yeah,
Yes.
I just laughed at that
Yes.
too a minute ago.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Victor says, "You guys just made my Tuesday in the office." Damn. Victor says, "Oh my brother, testify." Thank you for that one, Vic. And Ike, I just pissed myself during damn. Thank you, Ike. Oh my gosh. Oh, you all are so great. Oh Lord. But look, I can't really hate on the Lions. This team was given up for dead before Campbell became the head coach, and even the first year when he was head coach. And people wanted to dump trash on them as recently as early this year. Because they were saying, well, all right, so they were 9-8 in 2022. Fine, okay, but they were lucky. They had a run of 8 out of the last 10. They're not going to repeat that, and they didn't repeat that type of run in 2023. They just were a better team and executed better from week 1 to week 18. And to me, I really believe right now they are truly America's team right now. I think if there is a team that, if you were to put down your allegiances or fandom for any of your squads for any other team, it would be for the Lions, simply because of Dan Campbell. And I think I may have explained why you gave them an A+ with that statement right there, with the fact that you had a team that people just threw garbage on them and just left them for dead, and the Lions were like, "Okay, fine, you can leave us for dead. We're still gonna just beat the crap out of all of you." And then when we get to the NFC Championship game and we actually look good while we're doing it, then you can say, well, "Where did this team come from?" And that's exactly what happened. And when you have a whole cluster of fans saying that about a team, then yeah, I see why you gave them an A+. So I can't disagree with the A+. I just won't give them the A+, because I just wanted them to go just a little bit further, because I think this team could have gone a little further.
I just feel like with where they came from, and like you said, where the low-level expectations for them, even though we were speaking highly of them to start the year,
right?
There was many other teams that were ahead of them in the grading scale at that point in the season.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, I just had to give them what I gave them when it came to my grade.
Mm-hmm. But in my giving them an A-, I'm not going to hate on you giving them an A+, because I could totally see why. So it's not why you give them an A+. I totally get why. The expectations were low for not necessarily our expectations of them, but the overall expectations of them were low, because they were thinking, "Oh, this is the same online. So we'll get to Thanksgiving, we're going to laugh at them." Even this year, people were saying, "Oh yeah, we'll get to Thanksgiving. It'll be a done deal. The Vikings or the Packers will end up taking the division." Okay. And of course that didn't happen.
Hey, for them to have their most successful year, and like you said, 32 years since Barry Sanders, during the same season that his documentary came out.
Right.
A great documentary, by the way. If you haven't seen it, go back and check it out. I believe, if I remember right, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, it is.
It's Amazon. Yeah. So with all the streaming stuff out, I can't remember, because I just had to sign back up for Apple Plus or whatever, Apple TV Plus, so I could watch the Dynasty series on the Patriots. So it's a really good series. So definitely, if you guys haven't seen that, go back and check that out. But yeah, the Barry Sanders one is good. But for them to be able to pull that off in that time frame while that documentary is coming out, I thought it was pretty special. But it's only the beginning. I feel like we're going to see the Lions back here again, even though there's some that are saying that could be the only time we see this Lions team get as far as we did. No, I think this is only the beginning. Yeah, and the other NFC teams need to take notice. The Lions, I mean, not the Lions, but the 49ers might want to spend a little bit more money to continue to be relevant, because they're not going to be able to pull off what they pulled off this year. And in recent past, and get to the Super Bowl, if they're going to get as far as they did this year again, they better get that Super Bowl victory because the Lions are coming, and so are the Packers. I mean, these two teams in this division, even though the overall division was lackluster this year, minus the Lions, these two teams are going to be at the top of the NFC for years to come. And the 49ers need to get this ring that they're going for like this next season, or they're not going to get it. Because then you got Brock Purdy's contract that's going to be going up because of what he's produced. He deserves to get paid. And that's going to adjust your overall team because that's going to adjust your cap when you pay that money to him. So, yeah, the NFC North definitely was tight this year, but it's only a matter of time before these two teams are the 1A and the 1B of the division and the league in the conference itself.
Yeah, I agree with you. Steely Dan made a song called "Changing of the Guard," and I think if I were to think about the NFC North, that's the feeling and vibe I get. It's sort of the change of the guard. Now, if I were to grade the division by record, I'd probably say C. But the Lions and the Packers in the playoffs, they did some damage. And you have a team in the 49ers where they got a chance to play both of them, and they beat them, yes, but they beat both of them by field goals. And now you have a team that's looking at the two NFC North teams that's like, dang, okay, we're going to have to hold them off. And I don't know if we'll have enough firepower to hold them off next year, 2025, 2026, because we may, like you said, we may have to get our rings now. And if we don't, we might be in trouble because we'll probably be lapped by one of these two teams. So because I'm seeing a change in the guard, and I'm feeling change in the guard vibes with the NFC North, but definitely the Packers and Lions, I would give that division a B-, only because the Vikings and the Bengals, Vikings and the Bears do bring the quality of the division down a little as a collective. But look, Kevin O'Connell, I actually like you now. I had my doubts about you, 2022. I actually like you now because the job you had to do. Whoo! Wow.
I mean, this division that, we can at least say that 3 out of the 4 teams have really strong coaching.
Yes.
The Bears, we need a little bit more time before we can really figure that out with Eberflus. But with the other 3 teams that we mentioned, they've got some really great coaching. For the Packers and LaFleur to be able to pull off what he did the first year without Aaron Rodgers. You got Man Campbell over there with the Lions. And then, as always, on the other team, aforementioned as well, Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings. Definitely great coaching over here from what we saw. And the best is yet to come, I feel like. And, like we said, the 49ers, did he get on it quick? But the Chiefs are still the ones to knock off the top of the ladder at the top of this chain of the NFL pyramid. So we'll have to see how 2024 goes. But for 2023, I like how we both graded this NFC North.
Yeah, thank you. I do too. And now that we're talking about it, the grade I am looking forward to hearing the most come out of your mouth is the 49ers grade. Because I get the feeling we're going to have some choice thoughts and words when it comes to that team. And that is divorced from Snowman. Just the thoughts of what we think about the team. Victor says, this just in. The composer of the national anthem of the Moronic Republic of Cowboys Nation, the artist formerly known as Tyrese Cisco McKnight, has legally changed his name to Tyrone Alizé McDummy. He has asked his fans to only refer to him as Tam. I bow to both you gentlemen for your genius. Thank you. So we'll bow to you for actually glossing him something that is hilarious too, man. And the 6 says, look, that's Alizé, A-L-I-Z with the E. He says, be glad his middle name isn't Hennessy or Remy Martin. Oh gosh. You all are
It just
too creative.
Alizé in the it
I love
fit.
it. I love it.
I was just going with what I felt in the
I love it.
moment.
I
And that's
love
how I felt.
I love it. 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 Oh my gosh. Oh man. No, there's a reason why we played that button, and that wasn't even a mistake either. I just felt the need to hit it. But this will be a transition from the NFC North to the AFC North. And we begin with the Bengals. Now, you will notice that the team that finished the worst in the division still finished over 500, which that hasn't happened in 33 years. The last time it happened was 1970. 53 years. 1970 was the last time it happened. The Bengals stumbled out the gate and limped to close the year. But I have to admit, the team just was battling. They showed fight no matter who was in front of them. They battled with Joe Burrow, and they battled even harder with Jake Browning. And unfortunately, Burrow had to go out when he dinged his thumb against the Ravens in Baltimore. And Browning took over, and the team seemed to respond to him well, and he seemed to make a good accounting for himself. But where did the Bengals go wrong? Well, here's where they went wrong. When they didn't play an AFC North opponent, they were 8-3. When they did play an AFC North opponent, 1-5. Your thoughts on the Bengals and the grade that you give them?
Looking at this team right here, at first I would consider ranking them close to the Vikings, and how I had them earlier. But I just feel like with the other teams inside of this division, I really can't, because 9-8 is like the equivalent of 7-10 in the other divisions, or even 6-11. 6-11. Because just the way that this division is, it's a little bit different than the other division that we had mentioned. And I don't know, it's kind of tough. I feel like with what they did without Joe Burrow, it warrants them to get a little bit better of a grade. If on the other hand, because of the way the division was set up, I feel like I need to give them a little bit worse. I'm gonna go with a C minus. I don't want to go with a D because I feel like that's too low. But because of the fact that they had a winning record in the season, for one, for what they did without Joe Burrow, because once he went down, I mean, everybody chalked it up as that was over.
That was it for him. Right.
Just like the Vikings in the other division, they still were alive with their backup. The Vikings needed 4 quarterbacks to keep it going as long as they did, which hurt them to that aspect. But their backup, Mr. Browning over there, and for the Bengals, is a great system quarterback that's definitely probably one of the better backups in the league. Don't think that he would be that successful as a starter. I think he'd have like the same success as maybe like Nick Foles when he went out on his own. He's better as a system backup quarterback than he is as a starter anywhere else. But when I think about all that, just like you had mentioned, they stumbled out the gate and they limped to a close. They limped to close of the year. They did show a tremendous fight, but that was based on the weapons that were around Browning, rather than him coming in and making an impact as, like someone like maybe Uncle Rico has done for other teams in the past, where he came off the bench and was able to keep the team alive. Browning was a no-name, didn't really have that much clout in the NFL to where we didn't expect for him to be able to pull off what he did. The games were close. It wasn't anything to look back on as, he blew us up the water, but he did his job. And for them to get as far as they did with the lowered expectations once Joe Burrow got hurt, I feel like it warrants a C minus.
I agree with you. And the reason why I agree with you, and here's another reason why I agree with you. And Victor's on point. He says, "Look, you got to win your division games first," and yeah, you do. And that is what definitely hurt the Bengals. That plus, go ahead.
That's why the 1-5 that you had brought that record within the division, I couldn't rank them any higher than a C minus. And usually I would rank a team lower with that type of division record. But because they finished with a winning record, because they did what they did with the backup, I felt like they at least deserve a C minus.
Yeah. And the 1-5 that came against the one came against the Browns, who sat a lot of their starters in week 18. So if that was if the Browns didn't secure a playoff spot and they needed it for the playoffs, that record might have been 0-6. But because the Browns handled the Bengals when they played them in Cleveland. And I mean handled. I mean, the Bengals didn't stand a chance in Cleveland against them. And that was week 1, and that was with Mr. Deshaun Watson starting at QB, but we'll talk about the Browns a little later. I agree with the grade for one, the exact reason you put forth in terms of, it was 9-8. It is above 500, but they still finished last in the division. Oh, and by the way, the other 3 teams made the playoffs. So, yeah. So you have that. And secondly, on top of it, there were some real backbreaking L's they took. And I can name 4 right off the top of the top of the list. The L, besides the first 2 L's, which were against the Browns in Cleveland and at home against the Ravens. The L they took here in Nashville, 27-3. They had no business losing to the Titans like that at all. That's one. Another is the 30-27 L they took at the hands of the Texans. Now, yeah, you probably say, well, the Texans did win their division, made the playoffs, and they won a playoff game. Yes, all that is true. But Burrow was still playing. This was at home. This was a team they should have beaten because the Bengals were not littered with injury yet. And so, to me, that's an L that should have been a W. Then I look at the L they took in Pittsburgh, where they had everything to gain, and if they were to have beaten them in Pittsburgh, the Bengals would have wounded the chances of the Steelers making the playoffs while improving their own. And then they got summarily bounced to the playoffs the very next week in Arrowhead against a team that they felt as though they owned, and now they're realizing that team owns them now. Those 4 losses to me typify the Bengals this season, and that's why I could not grade them higher than C minus, because they had times where it was like for the comeback victory they had at home against the Vikings. Those 4 L's I just look at and be like, yeah, you were impressive. With the impressive comeback victory against the Vikings, I can name the Chiefs L. The impressive win that you had when you denied the Jaguars the number 1 seed and you started their downward spiral. Yeah, then you had the 27-3 L you took in Nashville. I mean, I could just keep going with that all throughout the season with them. So C minus is on the money. On the money. Oh, Ike says, look, they should have started AJ McCarron.
Yeah, that's a good one, Ike. I mean, maybe if he was in the UFL, I would love to actually see him back on the St. Louis Battlehawks. Actually, wait, no, he did go back, didn't he?
Yeah.
We talked about that last week.
Yeah, he's back there now. He's back there now, and he was with the Bengals this past season. But yeah.
So I think AJ McCarron's happy he's signing 1-year deals wherever he's going. So he's playing football all year round, or at least he's employed all year round. So financially, double dipping like that, it's working out great for AJ McCarron. But at least this way, he actually gets to play. And in the NFL, he's still a decent backup if he gets the opportunity. But yeah, no, it's comical right there. I think that they did better with Browning because of the system that's in place over there in Cincinnati now. It's a little bit different than when AJ McCarron was there with the coaches who preceded him over there. But look, I like AJ McCarron, but I think we're going to have a little bit more fun talking about him in the UFL in the weeks to come.
We are. There's no question about that. And I think it's safe to say we're both fans of AJ McCarron. So yeah, definitely. No question. But our grade is similar. Actually, it's the exact same. I totally agree with the assessment that you gave of the Bengals. Yeah. Even though they were 9-8, to me, it still was an unimpressive season. Just to be completely forthright. Now, we mentioned the Steelers. Well, we can talk about them right now. Well, they finished their season at 10-7, and they finished third in the AFC North. However, they did secure and procure the number 7 playoff seed in the AFC. And they did it, with a lot of help from a lot of different places. We will talk a little bit more about that when we do the AFC South. The offense was absolutely, abjectly terrible. Oh my gosh, I can go.
Yes.
I can go. I definitely could go this way too, because that offense was dumpster pelicaning it all the way up. Bishop, was the Steelers offense fun to watch?
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no.
The Steelers offense takes 19 weeks worth of but they have to thank their lucky stars. Their defense was up to the task, because Kenny Pickett just is not the guy and did not prove to be the guy this past year. The strength of the team was their defense, and chiefly amongst them TJ Watt, who led not just the team but the league with 19 sacks. And it wasn't for that D that was absolutely stubborn from week 1 to the wild card, they would have been sunk. Now, I'll give them credit. I'll say this about the running game of the offense. As the season went along, it improved a little bit more with Warren in the backfield, along with good Lord, senior brain Harris. Thank you. So I know the name was going to come, but I had a moment of senioritis. Warren, the two-headed monster of Warren and Harris, that running game improved incrementally as the season went on. And I'll be doggone, the team actually made the playoffs with 8 thumbs, Mason Rudolph as quarterback. Yes, the same guy that Myles Garrett wanted to decapitate with the helmet years back. Yes. It looks like Rudolph grew up. I'm sorry, sir.
It was, look at Ike's comment. I read it like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The Rudolph the Red-Nosed.
AKA, and I'm going to steal this one, Ike, because I love it a lot. Mason the Ruthless Racist.
I read it like Mason the Ruthless Racist.
Oh, that's even better. Mason the Ruthless Racist. Had a very shiny head. I'm sorry, my bad. But yes, the Steelers made the playoffs with Mason Rudolph as quarterback, but their season ended very abruptly with a 31-17. to the Bills. And the game was 21-0 early in the second quarter. Your thoughts on the Steelers and the grade you give them?
You know, with the previous division that we talked about, we talked about coaching and, how impactful it was. And this is another example of that. Mike Tomlin
give him his
extends his streak for the entirety that he has been a head coach in the league, especially all that time being with the Steelers, and has not had a losing record yet.
17 years and counting. Yep.
17 consecutive years. And this year we thought that streak was going to end. And the crazy thing is that the 1 year where it looked like he was going to do that, they were calling for his head. And then he goes out there and finishes the year 3 games above 500 and finishing with 10-7. So when you think about all that, and then now miraculously he's staying again, I got to think for somebody that wins and has, probably the most wins-loss record in the NFL right now, has probably had the most pressure in the past 5 years as far as if he's going to have a job or not by the end of the year. Until we get to the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, we don't know. And that was definitely propelled this year as far as how the wins and the losses stacked up by the way the defense played. The defense carried them, to that 10-7 record. Yes, and TJ Watt with those 19 sacks, boy, I tell you what, they would not have gotten that far with Kenny Pickett as the starting quarterback for one. And, TJ Watt could have had 25 sacks, but if Kenny Pickett would have started all 17 games, they would not have finished 10-7. They would not have made the playoffs. And the fact that they made the playoffs with Mason Rudolph, who a lot of people didn't even know he was still with the Steelers after, what happened with Myles Garrett was many years ago. So now in 2023, well, during that season, now we're in 2024, but for this season, nobody would have thought that when Mason Rudolph came in to take over when Kenny Pickett was out, that they would have the success that they did to end the year and make the playoffs. So it speaks volumes on how nasty that defense is over there in Pittsburgh. But for Mike Tomlin to pull off what he did, I feel like he should have been in the discussions for Coach of the Year when it came to the nominations and the awards. And even though the best man won, I feel like, he deserves his flowers in the aspect of people are expecting him to go 7-10, not 10-7. I have a lot of praise for Mike Tomlin over there in Pittsburgh. Very jealous they took my guy Cole Holcomb away from Washington, but it definitely worked out for him over there on the defense, as Holcomb definitely contributed towards the great season that the Steelers had. So looking back on it in everything as a whole, when it comes to that in this division, it's tough. I want to grade them higher than this, but on the fact that they made the playoffs and they did what they did, I want to rank them higher than this, and I feel like I'm underwhelmingly grading them, but I'm going to have to give them a C for this one. I want to give them a C+ or B-, but I just feel like, in all fairness, because of what the other teams did that we still have left to discuss, I'm going to give them a C. And it's mainly the offense weighing them down. If the offense is a little bit better, and they had another win or two and maybe advanced a little bit more in the playoffs, I would rank them a little higher. But their offense brought them down enough to where I have to be fair about this and give them a C.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. I think the C is a fair grade. And it sucks because that defense is awesome. And you probably say, well, Cole, they gave us 31 points in the wildcard round. Okay, well, you try to be the side of the ball that you're the reason why the team advances as far as they go. And I think back to the home game they played against the Browns. Now, the Browns offensively were okay against them. They weren't great, but they were okay. But the Steelers offense against the Browns was horrible. They didn't score a touchdown. They only managed 4 field goals against them. If it weren't for 2 touchdowns on defense, if it wasn't for a pick 6 and a fumble return for a touchdown, that game would have been a nail for them. That game right there, I circled that game, and unfortunately, that's the game that Nick Chubb got injured for the season when Mika Fitzpatrick went down low on him. That typifies to me the Steelers season right there, because if the defense did not outscore the offense in that game, the team would have taken an L, because the offense didn't do their job fully. And that to me hurts the overall grade of the team. Oh, they made the playoffs. Yes. They won 10 games. Yes. But Nah. Uh, the offense just didn't come to play all year round. And they didn't really start to show signs until December. And that was when Kenny Pickett was out the paint. When other QBs, heck, they even played better under Mitchell Trubisky. Not much, but he actually did play better under Mitchell Trubisky. That is how bad that offense is with Kenny Pickett under QB. But that defense is awesome. Unfortunately, I agree with you. C is the right grade because the offense is just that bad. And the defense, oh man, I'm so sorry that we didn't get a chance to see them shine in the walk around because yes, TJ Watt was out for that game too, to boot. And that furthers the point of the defense worked so tirelessly to get the team to the playoffs that they actually hurt themselves while doing it.
Oh, they were worn out. They were
done.
gassed by the time they got through week 18 in the season.
Yeah. And if it wasn't for the fact they were playing a team in the Ravens where they didn't need the game, they had the number 1 seed sewn, so they didn't really have to compete all that hard. Although the Ravens competed hard enough, but they didn't really have to go full bore against them. If it wasn't for that, we may not have seen them make the playoffs, because I think we would have seen a team with a gassed offense. With a gassed defense and an inept offense. But credit to Mike Tomlin. The dude just does not give up. He does not allow his charges to give in, and they just keep fighting. But
I think that was the most heartbroken for the Steelers that were out of all the teams that were eliminated in the playoffs, because you don't want to see anybody put as much fight as they do and get to the playoffs and be so worn out that they can't even do anything. I mean, the deficit that they faced in that wild card round was a result of they were worn out by the time they got there. They didn't have a chance, and it's sad to see that because they deserve better for they put forth as a fight to get there.
They did. And it's unfortunate. That's why I'm not going to clown them for saying, well, they took it on the chin by double digits. They had nothing else to give. They had nothing else to give. Even the improving offense had nothing to give because they had to struggle to get to that point offensively. Defensively, they were holding up the whole doggone operation. They're like, okay, someone else take over. We're done. So I tip my cap to the Steelers having that fight and that grit. And yeah, I was paying for them when they got bounced too. And I felt it before they played. I was like, man, this is an easy opponent for the Bills to wallop. And it's because they just simply have nothing else to give. That defense for sure had nothing else to give. And they were going to Buffalo without TJ Watt on the field. I'm like, I hate it for him. But yeah, I give them a C. But the fight they have, that is a credit to Mike Tomlin and their defense led by Mika Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt. And shout out to Cam Hayward too. A wonderful captain in his own right. That side of the ball, they just will not allow a team to die. They will not allow a team to give up or surrender. I tip my cap to them. Now, the Cleveland Browns, the team that ended up procuring the number 5 AFC playoff seed, they struggled all year long. The first big-time struggle was Nick Chubb, who, and I mentioned when I talked about the Steelers, he went out early when the Browns visited Pittsburgh, and he messed up his other knee. Is the knee that he messed up in college when he was running back for Georgia was rehabilitated fine, but the other knee got messed up this past, I think it's October, when they went to Pittsburgh. Man, I hate it for him. And he was running like a champ, and that happened to him. I hated to see that. But Chubb wasn't the only casualty. You had other casualties, mainly Deshaun Watson, who he showed some signs, but not necessarily the signs that we wanted to see in terms of, wow, he actually looks really good. He looked pedestrian at best, and he looked out of sorts at worst. And he did complete his time on the field in Baltimore, throwing 14 of 14 for 150 yards, and I think a couple of touchdowns in a come from behind 33-31 victory in Baltimore. But a dinged up wing had him gone for the season, and that was early enough as well for the Browns to spiral downward. But here's where the good news gets great for them. The defense was good. Not so good on the road, though. They gave up 29 points on the road, but they were stingy at home, only giving up 13. And they were led by the Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett, with 14 sacks and the second most double-teamed player in the league. Second only to Micah Parsons of the Cowboys. The whole team got galvanized by Joe Flacco being a QB, eating a hot dog one Sunday and throwing 3 touchdowns the next. And he ended up doing so well, he became the comeback player of the year. And in juggling not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 QBs this year, Kevin Stefanski ended up taking home his second Coach of the Year award. But they got eliminated by the Texans in the wild card round by the tune of 45-14, when it looked like the defense, similar to that of the Steelers, was absolutely spent, and the offense just simply couldn't get going against the Texans in the wild card round. Your grade for them and your thoughts on the 2023 season for the Browns.
Earlier when I talked about, the Coach of the Year and the Best Man won, with Stefanski, and with what I'm about to say, he deserved it for what this team was able to pull off. You think about it, how they had Josh Dobbs in their rotation of quarterbacks of backups to start the year. Coming into training camp and the preseason, and then of course he leaves, goes to Arizona,
right,
and then the Minnesota after that. But just to think that they had him and they let him go, and then he has the type of success that he has in Arizona, and all of a sudden Deshaun Watson's down. You don't really have many reliable options between PJ Walker and DTR, and they're underwhelmingly performing, very, very lackluster, and that's probably a nice way to put it. But then, you pull a man off the couch who's literally sitting there eating potato chips, watching football, hanging out with his kids, playing around with his kids at home. It's midway through the season, and you make a phone call to him. And, the funny thing is, he comes in there, and like you have here in the slate, he galvanized the team. He absolutely did, because he fit well within the system. He was the best option out of all the free agents of someone to bring in to solidify this offense to where they can do what they needed to do to get to that seeding and get to the playoffs, for them to get a 5th ranked seed in the AFC and get there is definitely miraculous compared to how early in the season Deshaun Watson went down. The fact that they were they were underwhelmingly performing when he was in the rotation to begin with, because, they were doing okay, but they weren't doing what we thought they should be doing at that point in the year when he went down, for one. So for Joe Flacco to come in and do those things, even though this team was carried tremendously on their defense. I mean, this defense was the reason why they were the 5th seed in the AFC. It was the reason why they were even seeded to begin with, to even be in the AFC side of the playoffs and get as far as they did. Because when, Deshaun Watson goes down and gets hurt, and we don't have him there as a starting quarterback, nobody saw the Browns getting as far as they did, especially when you saw DTR and PJ Walker coming in and not performing well. And this is before even Joe Flacco was on the practice squad. So when you think about all that and it comes to grading this team right here, I have to grade them better than I just graded the Steelers. And the Steelers, I had them as a C. And I don't feel like C plus is fair because between the coaching and between what this defense did this year, I feel like they deserve at least a minimum a B minus. And that's what I'm going to give the Browns for this 2023 season based on their defense, based on what Stefanski did as a head coach, and the fact that Joe Flacco came in off the couch and he hasn't really been as relevant to this point that he was in 2023 since back when they won the Super Bowl early in his career. And he signed that contract. And then we haven't really heard much relevance of Joe Flacco since he signed that contract extension after winning the Super Bowl with the Ravens. So things definitely subsided for him after that, bounced around with a few teams. You had the Jets and then the Broncos, and then back to the Jets or whatever, and then, or in whatever fashion, and, and then now he's with the Browns. And, to someone that after a few more weeks of not having a job this past season, we probably would have thought that he would have retired. I mean, he was closer to retirement than he was to playing, and Joe Flacco came out there and did what he did, helped will this team to the B minus grade, along with the defense of Kevin Stefanski. Great on Joe Flacco to probably most likely close the chapter of his NFL career in the best way possible, because I don't see him getting an opportunity like he did this past season again. And good on him to help this team get this B minus grade for me today.
B minus. I'll actually give him a B. And I can't really hate the B minus. I'll give him a B. And the reason why I give him a B, this team threw all their chips to the center of the table, thinking that Deshaun Watson was going to be their piece to actually have them succeed. And even when he was on the field, it just didn't look all that promising for them. Then you have Nick Chubb, who this dude was running as if he was a tank. I mean, I actually love running backs like him, where he has this diversity of he can run away from him if he wants to. He can run by you and be slippery if he wants to. He can bulldoze over you if he wants to, and he loved to. And to see that type of entity go down, I hated it, because he was the reason why when I tuned in, I wanted to see the Browns. It was him. And then it had to change for me. Then it had to be, okay, I got to see the other side of the ball. So I got to see how Myles Garrett is going to be. And we talked about why we thought other people probably were more deserving of Defensive Player of the Year, but I pretty much figured he was going to be him, because I was looking at this guy and I'm like, wow, teams have the game plan for this guy and he still gets his numbers. This is impressive. This is really impressive. And we talked about it when the Browns had to go against the Texans in the wild card round. I said, number one game plan, the Texans have to run almost everything at number 95. And that is the only way you could defend this team. You run stuff at him often, have him deal with a whole lot of track before he gets the ball carrier. That's the only way you can beat this team. And the teams that are successful in doing it had success against them. But the teams that didn't struggle mightily. And we can mention the 49ers amongst one of those teams that struggled mightily against them, because they didn't do such a thing. And their biggest weapon, Trent Williams, was being pushed all over the field by number 95. So to me, it was, okay, so Myles Garrett is the reason why this team is going to advance as far as they advance. And then I had to tweak it yet again, because it was like, okay, so that's on his side of the field. Now we've taken care of the other side of the field with Joe Flacco. And that was the best he looked since, to me, his drive to the ring he got in Baltimore. He looked, I won't say he looked the best QB in the game, because he did make a fair share of mistakes. What I loved about him was that he was able to get the ball down the field. he was able to get the ball to the playmakers, and he was able to give a little more breathing room to allow them to be balanced on offense. And my thought was the last few years, the Kevin Stefanski-led team leaned just a little bit too hard on the trick plays and the run. And they're like, okay, we'll ease up a little bit on trick plays, but we're going to throw it down the field a little more often because we got a big arm in Joe Flacco. We can do that. And once they did that, once they simplified that type of process, the offense looked better. And that's the best Kevin Stefanski's offenses looked, including when Baker Mayfield was there. And I don't actually fault Baker for that. I fault Stefanski for that. So I love this team and how they were able to lick their wounds, still got up, still got off the canvas, and they still gave you a fight. And if you weren't willing to fight back, you were going to get left behind. And I actually believe the L that the Texans took to the Browns in December helped them, reminded them of the fact of, oh, so if we don't fight back against this team, we can get punched again, knocked out early, and be down the canvas. Oh, we got to fight back, and we got to fight back hard, and we got to fight back often. And that was the lesson that I think other teams began learning toward the end of the year. But what I love about the Browns this year is that they were good to watch from an inspirational standpoint, sort of like the Rocky film. You know, you sort of had a feeling that, yeah, they're going to take it on the chin. They're going to take an L. But man, the fight they exhibit, I almost want to root for them. I almost want them to win. I really wanted them to succeed. I wanted them to go as far as they could go. And if it wasn't for the Texans, I would have rooted for them for that, in that same vein, for that same reason. And I love seeing teams like that where they could have just folded up the tent. They could have been like, okay, the white flag's raised. 2024, here we come. No, they're like, okay, well, we're in this fight. And they came very close to giving the Ravens a scare for the AFC North crown. They had fight. And we're talking about a team that went through four different quarterbacks before Joe Flacco was the guy. So yeah, I'm impressed with the Browns this past year. And going forward, there's a lot of pieces on defense with the Browns I really like, and it doesn't involve Myles Garrett's name.
Their offensive line didn't look bad either. They look like they got a pretty solid offensive line because once Joe Thomas left, I mean, they kind of struggled for a little bit.
They did.
And
They did.
for them to make the moves that they made this past offseason, you can see they solidified that offensive line a little bit. Another thing, too, that I want to bring up to kind of add another layer to what you were talking about with Joe Flacco is I feel like he didn't really have the pressure that he had in the past with the other teams that he played for. And I'm not talking about because of a lack of an offensive line. I think the lowered expectations for him for this year. I mean, he didn't have as much expectations on his shoulders this year as he did in previous years because this year, mainly manage the game, don't turn the ball over. He did that and it exceeded those expectations for them to get as far as they did. I feel like he had higher expectations, especially with New York and with Denver after Baltimore, because when he went to Denver, it wasn't long after they won Super Bowl 50 in Denver.
Right.
And they were expecting him to be that missing piece because they didn't have a real quarterback after Peyton Manning retired. And that didn't work out. The Jets, of course, we already know how that worked. So this is his best opportunity to succeed since leaving Baltimore, and he definitely did that. And if his career is over, then at least it went out on a high note.
Yeah. And I mean, we were talking about a guy who's 39 now. So yeah, I think the only way it would have been better for Joe Flacco would have been another ring. But I did mention another because he already has one. So it wasn't the fight of, well, let's get the guy a ring and okay, he falls short. Man, well, it looks like he's going to end up having a disappointing end to his career. No, it's sort of like a cherry on Sunday type of ending to his career with this this push. So yeah, I've grown a fondness for the Browns just from the standpoint of this team fights, and I love the fight. I love a team that just does not want to give up and give in, and that you have to give them a fight to knock them out. And when I see a team like that, I just have to give props to them and tip my cap to them, and that's them all day. So yeah, good year, Browns, and I think, like I said, defensively, I think you're going places, and I totally agree with you, Drew. That offensive line, I think they've now recovered from the retirement of Joe Thomas. Then they did struggle for a minute, and now it looks like that line actually can pass block as well as they run block too. That's scary. That's real scary for the rest of the team, the rest of the league, because if they can get a good running game going with a solid quarterback play, wow. And then you have the Baltimore Ravens, the AFC North champs, and the number 1 overall seed in the American Football Conference, and also the team that finished with the best record of 13-4. The defense, I led off with this one. You started to hear rumblings with Humphreys and with Hamilton, and to a lesser degree with Clowney, but you were not hearing much about the defense as a whole. But they were unsung heroes throughout the season for this team. Whenever you saw the Ravens do well, I was starting to see a lot of these games where when they played the Lions, they boat raced them. When they played the Dolphins, they boat raced them. And there was another team they played, they just boat raced. And I'm like, wow. And each time they were focused on the performance of Lamar Jackson, which, yeah, he had a really good season. But I always looked at the defense, and I'm like, wow, the defense almost pitched a shutout in this game. They almost pitched a shutout in this game. They almost pitched a shutout in this game. I'm like, wow, why are people not talking about this defense? Because they are the ones that are really doing the damage as a collective. There wasn't a stud that you had to prepare yourself against. Like you didn't say, okay, well, like for example, it was the Eagles. Okay, so we gotta contain Hassan Reddick, or the Lions. We gotta contain Aiden Hutchinson, or the 49ers. We gotta contain Nick Bosa. You couldn't say this about the Ravens, but as 1 through 11 on defense, they deserve their roses and then some. Because to me, they were the number one reason why they got as far as they got. And I'll say that right here, right now. Because the offense was pedestrian. And yes, I know I'm saying that with the understanding that the Ravens offense, rushing wise, was the number 1 ranked offense. I know. When it came to offense, number 1 rushing offense came from Baltimore. Understand that. However, that offense was still pedestrian. And yes, they were dealing with the loss of J.K. Dobbins, and they did it with a committee of running backs and the overall MVP of the league, Lamar Jackson's legs. And his arms, too, because he actually did take care of the ball. He didn't really turn over the ball much, and you really didn't have that many fumbles. So, and I think that also led as well to time of possession, to keep the defense fresh, and to not put the team in compromising positions with making bad mistakes with the ball. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And like I said, they had many blowouts during the season where you just said, wow, this team, if they could keep the pedal to the metal like this, there isn't a team that can stop them. And this team, although they were decent at home, they were tough they were road warriors. They only lost 1 road game all year long. And we're talking about a team that had to play in Pittsburgh, in Cleveland, in San Francisco, In fact, to me, the best game of the year came in Santa Clara, and the 49ers took it on the chin. They defeated the Texans in the divisional round 34-10. It was 10-10 at half, and the Ravens in the second half actually decided to say to the Texans, you do not belong on the same field as us, and we will show you why by scoring 24 unanswered points in the second half. And credit Lamar Jackson, he had the best performance of his year in that second half, and he played mistake-free football in that game. But you couldn't say the same in the AFC Championship game, as they went down to the Chiefs 17-10, and it was a home defeat at that. And the Ravens weren't in the game at any point in time. Your thoughts on the AFC North champs and the number 1 seed in the AFC, sir?
You know, this team came so close to getting to the Super Bowl, and more than likely would have won the game, I feel like, had they played the 49ers or any other team, because they were that red hot. And mistakes with, you know, of course, Lamar Jackson in that pass that was intercepted late in the game, along with situations that, you know, were affecting their running game on that day, because they just could not run the ball to save their life. And they have to figure that out this offseason on how to establish more help, whether it's blocking or whatever it takes to get more run production out of their running backs, because Lamar Jackson can't keep running like this. He's 27 and is going to age out a lot faster if he continues to run the ball as much as he has. Like we talked about with other quarterbacks, such as Josh Allen, you see the production that you got out of Mahomes in the Super Bowl with running, because and as fast as he was, because he never runs and he can save that energy for moments like that when it's needed. So Lamar Jackson definitely did well this year, but I'm afraid that this is going to be his peak year if they do not get the pieces around him necessary, because he's 27. He just got his second NFL MVP. Okay. And, you know, it seems like he's been with the Ravens for a while, but he's only 27 years old. So, but the reason why I say that he could peak after this past year is if they continue to run him the way that they have been. We've seen other players that have been ran into the ground from their 20s, and then, you know, they're getting later on into their 20s and into their early 30s, and they just can't do anything anymore. And when 75% of your game is known as a mobile quarterback and running, and you get to 30 years old and you can't run anymore, there's not going to be many opportunities for you. Look at what happened to Cam Newton as an example. Right. So right here and right now, the Ravens need to figure this out this offseason, and we'll cover that more as time goes on. But looking back on what they did in the 2023 season, it's definitely nothing short of remarkable compared to their teams of the past and what they were able to pull off this year between the offense and the defense. The defense was just as nasty as the offense. They were one of the better, well-balanced teams in the NFL on all aspects, between offense, defense, and even on special teams. You know, the addition of Odell Beckham Jr. definitely helped out with the receiving core and gave him an additional weapon for someone who could sling the rock too. You know, their running core did well for the majority of the season, but then there were times that you and I were talking about throughout the season as well. When your quarterback has more yards and rushing than your running back, it's going to leave some red flags. And I told you that several times, and I said if they don't figure this out by the time they get to the AFC Championship game, they're going to get eliminated. And we saw that happen when they lost 17-10, because when he had to step away from his abilities as a running quarterback, even though that was the only positive thing that was happening in the running game that day was him, compared to his other three running backs that compared on total yards less than what Lamar Jackson did on the day. So looking at that, and then when he was forced to step up and be a quarterback, he threw the ball into the other hands of the defenders and gave the game up. So between that and some coaching miscues in that game, is what cost him. But when you look at their 13-4 season, what they did in the playoffs and the divisional round to get to the AFC Championship game, I have to, you know, give them their flowers there, as the Texans are no slouch of a team. That's your team, but they are no slouch of a team. That's why they got as far as they did. But they handedly defeated them 34-10 in the divisional round. So
Mhm.
when I think about that and their overall success in the season, I got to give them an A. I got to give them an A is going to be my grade for the Ravens. I know that I gave the Lions a 12-5 record. I gave them an A+. But I feel like, with what the Lions did, we didn't expect them to be 12-5 for one. We didn't expect them to get to the NFC Championship this year. The Ravens, we did. The Ravens, we were talking about early on in the year. We were discussing that if they continue to stay healthy, and you and I said it too, this is probably the healthiest, meanest defense we've seen of the Ravens since the early 2000s when they won that first Super Bowl, because everybody was healthy coming into this playoff run and nobody was really banged up. So to see what we saw and get the production that we got, even though it was a miscue or two in the AFC Championship game, had those not happened, they would have gone to the Super Bowl. I would have probably given them an A+, regardless if they would have won the game or not. But because of the miscues in the AFC Championship game, I have to dock a little bit from that. And I'm going to grade them with an A for their performance in the 2023 NFL season overall.
I like the grade. I'm probably going to be a little harsher. I'm gonna give them an A- because I really believe that they underachieve. The reason why I give the Lions an A- is because they really had a wonderful performance in the first half, followed by seeing them literally collapse right before our very eyes in the third and the beginning of the fourth quarter. And if I saw them actually fight back in that game more than they did, like if they would have gotten themselves together, kick a field goal, and send that game to overtime, I probably would have given them a higher grade. But I docked them because of that particular performance and Dan Campbell's game management skills or lack thereof there. The reason why I'm giving the Ravens an A- is for the exact reason you said. We anticipated them to get at least this far. With the number one seed in the AFC, we were thinking this team, if they played the way we saw them at many points of the season, heck, we didn't go to the way they played in early January against the Dolphins. If they played like that against them, which I believe the final score of that game was 56-19, if they played like that against anybody, they could have been in the Super Bowl. And that type of expectation was on them then. And because they fell woefully short to the Chiefs, and yes, you're saying, well, Cole, they only lost to them by a touchdown. They weren't in the game. Lamar Jackson reverted back to the reason why I have winced about this guy in feeling as though he has to get everything back with one throw, a deep throw of his arm. And yes, he has a deep arm. He can throw the ball deep. But it almost harkened back to, well, wait a minute. So his decision-making now is coming into question. That we were starting to ask that again about him. So, okay, so yeah, he got his money. He became the MVP again. He had a pedestrian season. He didn't have a spectacular season, but he didn't have a bad one. But he is the quarterback of the team that had the best record. And we were starting to question, well, he made bad decisions against the Chiefs, especially in that second half. And even with the fact that you could say, well, he was the leading rusher of the Ravens that game, people didn't talk about the leading rushing aspect of him. They were talking about his decision-making in the pocket. And I saw regression there. I saw regression. I'll be doggone him. I'm about to say what I'm about to say. I saw regression with John Harbaugh. I'm thinking to myself, you're a student of Andy Reid. I figured you'd be motivated to want to show the teacher what you learned outside of what he taught you. And you had the tougher defensive squad, and you're at home. There is no reason you should have taken an L against this Chiefs team. And I'm not discrediting the Chiefs. You heard what I said when it came to that game. I said I believe that unfortunately they had the advantage at quarterback, they had advantage in head coaching, and the Chiefs are going to win that game. However, if you're the number one seed, you have a defense the way that it is constructed, and you played a really good game the week before, because as a defense, you only allowed a field goal to the Texans because the other 7 came from a punt return for a touchdown. You only allowed a field goal against the Texans with a QB that had almost a perfect rating the week before that. So you have a defense that is suited and booted, as they say. And they did their job in the second half. They shut a really good offense down, and they didn't score at all in the second half. But you saw a lot of miscues from that side of the ball in the first half. So I saw a team that didn't come in prepared, and that's a coaching thing. And not prepared on the side of the ball that they really rule in, which is, to me, defense. And then on the offensive end, I was seeing them put too much weight on the shoulders of Jackson to do the thing and only call 8 rushing plays that didn't involve number 8. 8. The whole game in the AFC Championship game, 8. One of those runs actually went for about 30 plus yards. 8 times you hand the ball to your running backs. No. And so I was saying, okay, regression to QB, regression with the head coaching, dare say regression with both the coordinators. And it was it sort of took the wind out of my sails to want to give this team something higher than an A-. But they were supposed to get to the Super Bowl. They fell short, and they fell woefully short, and they didn't really look good in the AFC Championship game. And so for me, it's an A-, even considering the good year they had, and the thumpings they gave, and even the thumping they gave in the playoffs. They just fell short. Yeah, they just fell short. Now, for the overall grade of the AFC North.
Oh, we didn't even do that with the last one.
No, we did. I said. With
I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't. All right, well, fine. NFC North. What's your grade, sir?
NFC North, for the underwhelming play overall, except for the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give them a C.
Yeah. Okay, so for the AFC North, the plus to me definitely is all teams finish above 500. So that has to warrant something. The only minus that this is the only minus I have for this division. 2 of those teams that advanced in the playoffs got bounced in the wildcard round. That's the only minus that I can say for this division. That's the only minus. Outside of that, you're talking about the coach of the year. You're talking about a guy who brought the team from nowheresville to the playoffs. You're talking about a guy in John Harbaugh who he has his team in the mix every year. And then the worst coach of the division, Zach Taylor, he actually did a pretty good job, all things considered. I have to give this division. Hey, I will say this. I will give the division an A. And I don't think I will give another division an A. I will actually say that right now. AFC North gets an A from me.
I can agree with your analysis there. I'll say that they get an A too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And going forward, I think this division can still give a lot of the NFL a ton of problems. The only question mark I have is, what are they going to do at quarterback for the Steelers? That's the only question mark I have. Outside of that, you almost have a Katie Bar-the-Door Pier 6 brawl as to who is going to be the AFC North champ, because you got all 4 teams that could vie for the crown at any moment in any given year. Now, you have the Steelers who have to sort out their quarterback issues, and you may have the Browns who have to do the same thing, because we're not sure if Deshaun Watson is going to be their guy going forward, but hey, they slid a whole lot of money in his direction. Yeah.
They got to figure something out, because if not, they're going to be screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully Deshaun Watson takes this a little bit more seriously during this offseason, because I feel like that has a little bit to do with what's going on, because he's not taking care of himself. So when I put all that in the equation,
100.
I gotta look at all that there, and I think the 2024 season is going to speak volumes on the Browns franchise if Watson's going to be the guy going forward. 2024 is going to be the year we figure it out in year 3 of him being with the Browns.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. Ike comes through once again. B+ for the Ravens and Dollar Store Snoop Dogg QB.
Dollar Store Snoop Dogg. We got to give him this.
Acknowledge me.
Yeah, I'll acknowledge you on that. That was great there, Ike.
I don't know what's better, that one or seeing Jamel Hill have her husband actually say, who her husband's a huge Lions fan, actually say on camera that Jared Goff is the dollar store Ryan Gosling. I'm like, oh, that's just brutal.
I mean, he did play near Hollywood for a while.
Well, true.
So, I mean, he might have gotten the connections over there to get himself a little part-time gig once football ends. Be Ryan Gosling's brother here in about 10 years on a movie, and who knows? You can play the crackhead younger brother or something. I don't know. We'll find something else out with that in time.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good question. 6 says, will Watson be able to behave himself next season?
Well, if you ask Cole and his talking about his shoulder and his towel and grabbing his towel, and I love that bit when you're doing the piece. It starts off, you grab it.
Well, you know, girl, I've been waiting for this all off season. Yeah, no, I got to work. Yeah, I got to work out the shoulder. Yeah. You know the deal. Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. Oh yeah. Oh, the shoulder getting worked out. No, don't touch me, girl. Sit down. Sit down. The eyes on me, not the hands. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Oh. We're gonna work the shoulder out. Work the shoulder. Work. That's right. Hey, you know, I'm like Rihanna in this bedroom. Work. Yes, right. I'm working the shoulder. Work. Oh Lord. My arm, my neck, my back. My arm, neck, and my back. While I heal up, we'll be back with the GRIDIRON SCOOP. Ow, my arm.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Break.
We're just getting started. Total Football Talk will return right after this.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason Whitlock.
Ready to hang with some fellas who know football? Let's ride. LC Muscles 28.
I think they're the most overrated defense in the league.
Steel Sermon.
We did not trail for a single second.
Tiny Tim.
McCarthy is a bonehead.
A Pistol 90.
I'm going with my boys. Fins up, baby.
Get ready for the Four Horsemen of Peckham's. Every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central on YouTube. Poppy J.
You got the option to cry for the government. You got the option to protest. You got the option to keep buying, but this is also an option.
Wise El Jefe.
We're the first tech geeks. We're the first gamers. We're the first everything. Everything. Like Gen X's, we are the ones.
BS3 Network proudly presents the crew from the New York boroughs who never wants that smoke. Nah, they want that fire. Poppy J and Wise El Jefe. Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Check your local listings for your viewing and listening pleasure.
Dollar store Snoop Dogg. The ball. I'm sorry, my bad. Welcome back to Total Football Talk with Drew Willingham. I am Cole Johnson. I love that. Like that's hilarious.
That and the commercial that the Four Horsemen of Pick'em show commercial gets me every time. Tiny T. LC Muscles 179.
Oh Lord.
A pistol. I love that commercial.
Oh Lord, I'm glad that you enjoy my VOs, but
my favorite one of that commercial is Tiny T. I keep every time you do that, I think of A Christmas Carol and Tiny Tim just getting it, and then it's not even close to what is happening. But yep, whole T squared, Tiny Tim.
Oh my gosh, you are too much. Oh my. 6 says smooth bedroom voice of Cole Johnson. It's brought to you by Sleazy Salons. No mani-pedis, just hands and feet done. And silky smooth massage parlors. Happy endings guaranteed. Oh my. Only you sick will come up with stuff like that. Well, I think it's time for us to advance onto the Gridiron Scoop. We mentioned his name earlier, but it's time to talk about him now. The former Ohio State wide receiver and Biletnikoff winner Marvin Harrison Jr. will reportedly waive his chance to work out at the NFL Scouting Combine, which begins this week and will go until early next week, and will instead be training in Columbus in preparation for Pro Day and the upcoming NFL season. But he is not the only one who is going to skip the Combine in lieu of Pro Day. It is also publicized that Caleb Williams, the quarterback for USC, is also going to be skipping the Combine for his school's Pro Day. Now, my question to you, sir, about that is the following. Is this a good or a bad thing for NFL prospects like Harrison, like Williams, to skip the NFL Combine?
I don't think it matters when they're as ranked as high on the mock draft board as they are. And potentially it could be if they want it to affect their draft stock, and they might have some other teams that are a little bit lower, maybe the 3rd, 4th, and 5th overall picks, that they see themselves as a better fit there rather than the top 2 picks in the draft. So that could be part of their angle here. But at the same time, I don't think for these two guys it really affects them either way. Now, if they were not the top 2 or 3 people in the mock drafts around the world for the NFL right now, I would say it probably would hurt them, because there's a reason why you're not in the top 5 of the NFL mock draft picks for a reason, and your pro day could help you advance. But when you're in the top 1 to 2 to 3 of the picks and all the draft boards out there, you don't want to take a chance of potentially getting hurt. Even though there's been a low number of athletes in the past who've gotten hurt on their pro days, you're more than likely going to get hurt if you play in a Senior Bowl game than you are going to an NFL pro day. But maybe to them they're thinking they have, they don't really have much more left to prove, and might as well save that energy and put it in other areas. So with that being said, I don't think that this really hurts their draft stock whatsoever when it comes to Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams, and those aspects.
Good answer. Yeah, if you're high up, I agree with you. I think it's not a problem. And I think going forward, I think we'll probably be seeing even more of the high draft picks actually saying, okay, well, I'm aware of my draft stock. Normally the combine is there to improve it. Well, I don't think my draft stock needs to be improved, and I'll get a chance to show off my wares on campus. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that's fine. Six says, if you think that's ridiculous, Cole, picture this. I'm playing drums in a ZZ Top tribute band with Drew on bass and Ryan on guitar and Frank Beard. And like Frank Beard, I don't need a beard. Oh, Lord.
Really? Where I'm pointing to is myself in the younger days. I did play the bass professionally at some point, and it's still in the closet. I could bust it out and play you a tune now, but I'm retired.
Well, to tie in ZZ Top in this topic, what Marvin Harrison Jr. and Caleb Williams and others like him, his age, will realize is every girl's crazy about a short-dressed man. You knows that. Well, speaking about short-dressed men and young, well, we'll switch gears to the city of brotherly love, where the wide receiver of the Eagles, A.J. Brown, he called into a sports radio show last Friday to address rumors about his future with the team. And he went on to say on that show, quote, I have no problem. I want to be here. It's as simple as that. I love where I'm at. It's as simple as that. Next question. Close quote. Well, here is the next question, Mr. Brown. And I'll ask this to you, sir. Does A.J. Brown want to be in Philly, or is this a ploy?
It could be a ploy, for trade market value or whatnot. But at the same time, I mean, it's a lot less likely you're going to say what you say, and then on the other side of it, go to the front office, say you demand a trade, or not get re-signed or whatever the case may be. A.J. Brown was stolen from the Titans to come to the Philadelphia Eagles not too long ago. It wasn't that long ago that they were in the Super Bowl, but they have some more moves to make to get some complementary pieces around this offense and maybe a piece or two on defense before they even think about getting back to the Super Bowl again, especially after their decline that they had in this 2023 season after the start that they had. That was a great start the first 10 to 11 weeks. So looking at this, I don't think it's a ploy. I think it's more so him trying to get his voice to be heard so that way they hear, I want to be here, but you need to get some pieces around me to help us remain successful, because that will shortly turn into, I don't want to be here if you start the season off the way that you ended it this past year. If you start the 2024 season off the way that you ended the 2023 season, he won't want to be there much longer.
Yep. I cannot agree with you more. I really believe that I don't think this is a ploy, but I do think it is slipping into dangerous territory, though. Not saying that he shouldn't have said what he said, or not saying he shouldn't have done what he did either. But the optics don't look good. I mean, how the season began with him and Jaylen Brown, it did not look as harmonious as it did all throughout 2022. And the end of that season, most assuredly did not look as if the two were on the same page either. And if the forces were to continue the same as it was this past year in 2024, I'm with you. We'll be hearing A.J. Brown clamoring to want to be somewhere else. But he is best suited in Philly because he actually makes Jalen Hurts have to go to him deep. And I mean, Brown can run any route possible, but it forces It forces Hurts to think, okay, well, I can't just tuck the ball and run every time. I got to trust and rely on one of the best skill position players in the game today, and that's number 11. Whether we want to admit that or not, AJ Brown's one of the best skill position players in the NFL, and it forces Hurts to have to pay attention to that fact. And when he does, the team wins. When he doesn't, well, you saw what happened in December and early in mid-January. Do I need to say anything else? Well, going from one quarterback that loves to run to another that is a quarterback that loves to run, Justin Fields. His future was always going to be a primary plot in this offseason. However, it seems the speculation is starting to ramp up sooner than most expected, given the annual scouting combine hasn't even begun taking measurements. Fields found himself explaining on the St. Brown Brothers podcast with current Chicago Bears teammate Equanimous St. Brown and his brother Amon-Ra. Of course, he plays wide receiver for the Lions. And he had to answer the question why he unfollowed the Bears on Instagram. And Mr. Fields said, quote, "It's something that I just don't want to spend my time on. I'm about to go on vacation." Close quote. Well, my question is, will this be a permanent vacation for Justin Fields from the Browns, or otherwise, is this the end of Justin Fields as the Bears QB?
It very well could be, even though he's got other teammates speaking out saying that, in their words,
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no.
They would much rather keep him in the clubhouse and be their starting quarterback. But if I were to look at other teams that he could potentially slide into, I feel like the best available spot would be going to Pittsburgh and playing there, with Mike Tomlin. You still need a few more weapons around you in Pittsburgh for what they were able to do with Kenny Pickett, who absolutely sucks. Like I talked about last week when it came to Jimmy G and PEDs. But when it comes to this week, Kenny Pickett is the one who sucks on this edition of Total Football Talk. Now, looking at the overall spots for him to go to, when it comes to the only way they're going to get him for this year is through a trade, right? And if the Vikings don't sign Kirk Cousins, I still don't see Justin Fields being traded within the division, because even if the Bears give up on him and don't think that he can produce within their system, they sure as hell don't want to see him go to another team within the division and have success there. That's why the Packers wouldn't trade Favre to the Vikings, and he had to go to the Jets and then come back to the Vikings for the last 2 years of his career. And for the reason for what Favre did his first year with the Vikings, the Packers didn't want to see that. That's why they didn't trade him there. And that's why the Fields won't be traded from the Bears to anywhere in the division. And the only other option in the division would be the Vikings, because the Lions and the Packers already have their quarterbacks locked up, at least for now. The Lions maybe not for as long term as the Packers, because Goff is older and much older in aspects to comparison to Jordan Love. But looking at this team right here in the Bears, if they're going to get rid of Justin Fields, it's going to be now while they have the high draft stock. And they can still get some capital in return, too, to trade him. I feel like the most likely options are going to be in the AFC. If I were to pick one team per conference, I would see the AFC would be the Steelers, and the NFC would be the Atlanta Falcons, because, all the questions around Desmond Ridder, I don't think that, he's going to be there. It's less likely that Ridder is a starting quarterback for the Falcons next year than Fields is a starting quarterback for the Bears. The Bears have more likely of a chance to retain him as their quarterback than the Falcons do. One way or another, the Falcons are going to make a move in this offseason. And unfortunately, I think it may be for a former Titans quarterback. I think Ryan Tannehill might be going to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it's out of the 3 quarterbacks, I think, that are free agents this offseason, you got Kirk Cousins, you got Baker Mayfield, and both of them I feel like are going to return to their respective teams. Baker's at least going to return to Tampa Bay because out of the options of the teams that would sign him this offseason, the best opportunity for him to not only start but succeed is in Tampa Bay. And especially if Mike Evans decides to come back home. But I feel like they have a better chance of signing Baker than Mike Evans in Tampa Bay, and they can get them both. But as far as places for Fields to go to, the top 2 teams that are sticking out to me right now are the Steelers and the Falcons. And there are other potential opportunities out there, but if you were to ask me best team from each conference, that's who I would go with today.
Yeah, same. I think. Yeah, I think if it's the AFC, I see him going to the Steelers, and if it's the NFC, I see him going to the Falcons, and I think he would like the Falcons situation more, considering that Bijan Robinson is there, and look like his rookie campaign makes him look like a real promising guy in terms of building an offense around. So, yeah, I think those two elements come into play might be enticing for the Bears, provided they can get good compensation in return. I would not be surprised if he stays in Chicago either. I really would not. And it looks like Bears fan wants to still have him be there, but of course you have lingering over the Bears' heads. You have the number 1 overall draft pick, and you have a quarterback that you're not so sold on. So, it almost sounds like to me which pieces are going to move, because I'm thinking if they do draft somebody in the 1 overall, either that gets dealt or Fields gets dealt. Unfortunately, I don't see both staying on the field, on the team the same. Whoever I should say, whatever stays, the other's going, and that's a shame. But I think the Bears are now sort of at the place where they feel and they're pressured as though they have to do something. And if they were to not trade Fields and not trade in the 1 overall, I think they would feel as though they didn't do anything, even if they get a quality guy in the 1 overall. Sad, but I just think that's how it's going to roll. But hope he feels good no matter where he goes, and I hope he can shine wherever he does land, whether Chicago or somewhere else. And then a guy that you know very well, sir, former Commanders offensive coordinator / assistant head coach Eric Bieniemy is finalizing a 2-year deal to join UCLA staff as the Bruins associate head coach / offensive coordinator. The move marks a significant hire for the UCLA crew and the head coach Deshaun Foster, who intends to forge an NFL identity with the Bruins. It also marks a homecoming for Bieniemy, who grew up in the area and was a Bruins assistant from 2003 to 2005. Now, the former Buffalo had this to say about the move to UCLA. Quote, Southern California. I attended high school there. I started my career in the league here with the Chargers. It's obviously great to be back with the Bruins, where I was previously employed. Close quote. However, let's make this note here. When Bieniemy was playing in the NFL and he was a part of the Chargers, he was part of the San Diego Chargers, not the Los Angeles Chargers. But again, I digress. My question to you, sir. Would you call Bieniemy's gamble to branch outside of the Chiefs a success or no? Let me put it this way. Would you consider his gamble to branch outside the Chiefs a W or an
In the words of Coach Prime,
Ain't nobody care. Who cares? Ain't nobody care.
nah, I'm just joshing you.
Let me talk to him.
All right, so when it comes to the EB topic right here, you know, I feel like had he gone back to the Chiefs, I mean, for one, I think if I'm thinking about this right, if you take another job within the NFL and you have a contract somewhere else, I don't think they have to pay you. But since he went back to college and he's not in the NFL, the Commanders still have to pay him the remaining year on his deal. So it's kind of like how, you know, like Matt Rule, I will say, you know, not too long ago fired from the Panthers and had all those years left on that deal over there. Had he remained in NFL, he wouldn't have gotten the remainder of that contract. But since he went back to the college game, he still gets that payment. So it's the only way you can double dip. So I don't think that really weighed in too much into EB deciding to go back to college, because the only options he had was either some type of formidable role on the Chiefs or finding some type of job in college. And what hurt him is how late in the offseason, as far as the coaching moves that happened, there wasn't many opportunities for him once he was relieved of his duties in Washington. Once Dan Quinn came in and then he decided to bring in Cliff with a K, he was done over there as the offensive coordinator in Washington. Old EB was. And the timetable, I want to say it was February 3rd. So around the time, no, February 3rd was Adam Peters. It was only like a week or 2 weeks ago. It's like the 15th or something when all this happened with Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury and all that, when they announced it all. So by that point, Super Bowl's over. You know, all the big moves have been made as far as head coaching, which he wasn't going to get a head coaching job after a 4-13 offensive coordinator stint. But all the good offensive coordinators, like the positions like possibly going to somewhere like Seattle or somewhere else, was out of the question because those positions were filled. So it was either go back to Kansas City for a formidable role that wasn't going to be the OC position, because Matt Nagy definitely succeeded in his first year back as the offensive coordinator, because he took a formidable role when he came back after coaching the Bears and then was elevated to the offensive coordinator position when EB left after last year to join the Commanders. So EB's eyes, after 1 year removed, he wasn't going to go back and basically be in the Matt Nagy position to him being, you know, and vice versa the year before. He wasn't going to take a step back. So out of all the smaller opportunities that were out there, and like you said, Deshaun Foster wants to build something over there in UCLA. The only opportunity he had to basically elevate himself and his stock as a coach would be to go to UCLA. So for him to go there, I don't think it was a gamble to branch outside the Chiefs. And I don't think it, you know, I think it's a success. I don't think it's a failure. It is a gamble to step outside the Chiefs dynasty for you to potentially be part of the team that could win 3 straight Super Bowls up here and be part of 2 of those 3 Super Bowls. But he wouldn't be part of this one that's coming up this year in the same fashion as he was the first time when they won the first Super Bowl and the first of the current back-to-back Super Bowls. So I feel like, you know, with that, he has less to prove as he would if he were to go to UCLA and get the opportunity that he is now. So, you know, if UCLA is banging and clanging this year and climbing the ladder and doing the things that they could potentially do with somebody like EB heading the offense, we can see something special in college football over there in Southern California. And some teams like the Commanders, you know, and other teams that snoozed on him out there in the NFL could regret some of the decisions that they have made in the past couple of years and wish they'd given EB the opportunity that he deserved coming from Kansas City. However, with this past year in Washington, he was exposed a little bit. The more that I think about it, the more that I've come to acceptance of this past year as a fan/analyst of that team, I've come to understand that he was exposed a little bit. needs to grow a little bit more before given that type of opportunity again in the big leagues. And this opportunity in UCLA could be the opportunity that gets him right for that next opportunity.
Yeah. The only question I have is, will he get an opportunity to be the head coach anywhere in the NFL? Because I think that's, even if he were to be a head coach of a collegiate program, I think he really wants the NFL job. But that question still lingers. It is still out there. And it may have been a good gamble. I'm not sure. But what I am sure of is this guy loves to coach. That's obvious. And if he could find enjoyment somewhere and get onto a program or get into a franchise where they say, okay, here's the keys, we'll trust you to drive the whole vehicle, then I think he'll be happy, and I think he's still in the pursuit of it. Now, will he get there? That's a whole different ball of questions to ask.
I think this year's move was less of a gamble than last year. It was more of a gamble for him to leave Kansas City and go to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
That was the gamble, because had you stayed in Kansas City for another 2 to 3 years after that last season in Kansas City, you could potentially be the heir apparent to Andy Reid, because Andy Reid may not be retiring this season because of what he said after this past Super Bowl. But whether it's next season, after 2024 or after 2025, I have a feeling by the time that Patrick Mahomes turns 30 years old, he's going to have a new head coach. And had EB stayed as the offensive coordinator, he would be the heir apparent in my eyes as the next person to take over that franchise. He gambled big time, because if that were to happen in the next 2 years, the way that this team's set up, it's either going to go to Spags or it's going to go to Matt Nagy as the next head coach of the Chiefs. EB would be the next head coach with the way that he gels with everybody in that locker room. Maybe his style didn't work in Washington, but it worked in Kansas City. And he would have been that heir apparent. He gambled last year when he left to go to Washington, when he should have just stayed in Kansas City. His stock would have raised up a little bit more, winning a back-to-back Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator in 3 total. He'd be up there even higher than he is now. And the gamble, again, was last year. I don't see it this year. I think he has a better chance of success into reigniting the flame that everybody had out there in the past few years leading up to his departure from Kansas City, to where maybe, in what you were saying, he might not get the type of clout for the NFL head coaching job. But I feel like with what he does at UCLA will at least warrant him another opportunity as offensive coordinator in the NFL, maybe under a different umbrella than Andy Reid, that could potentially rise him up to one last opportunity as being in the conversation for being a head coach at some point. But the window is definitely closing. I agree with you with that. And the gamble of last year may have set him back from ever getting that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, no matter what, here's to Eric having success. I hope he finds it, because I think he has a lot to offer still to the game, and we'll definitely see as UCLA rounds third and goes to the Big Ten in 2024. And looks like Mr. Bieniemy is going there with them, with Sean Foster leading the way as the head coach there. Well, we shall see, though.
Total football talk.
Where my dogs at? Yes, I know that there's no gridiron play and won't be for another 5 weeks, but still, there might be some dogs out there to award. And for his, I will cede the floor to Drew.
Well, with this one, it's kind of tough because we just did this last week. But I guess with the top 5, we can go around to not just players, but, to people that are within the game of the NFL. And this one, I'm going to be honest, I didn't prepare for this one because I didn't think we were actually going to do this top 5. I thought this was a typo on our slate today because we had just done it this past week. So I'm gonna be honest, I'm not going to give a top 5 this week because I don't have this plan. I didn't have any idea that we were going to be
that's fine.
in this position. So I'm not going to give a top 5 this week. I'm ready to move to the chopping block.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Well, I'm not going to give a top 5. I'll just give a top 1. Well, the top 1, my dog of the week, I'm going to award later on in the show. I'll put it like that. Because I think it will make sense if we do. Well, you heard my brother. It's time to go to the chopping block. But before that, we'll be back right after this. Oh, don't pay attention to the feature attractions thing. But we're headed to the chopping block.
Next, the chopping block and snowflake of the week. This is Total Football Talk. Join Ryan McCarthy.
I became a Jets fan because Kurt the Frog was my favorite Muppet because he was green, and the Jets wore green. That's how I became a Jets fan.
And Dustin Henry.
ESPN is cashing all in on let's pay a few personalities and we'll just kind of fill in the gaps.
As they walk you through all of the world of sports from their perspective.
The Albany Empire, it's a literal circus.
No credentials required. Where, Ryan, say the tag.
Where you don't need a press pass to talk sports.
Every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. On YouTube and where you can find all podcasts. This is a BS3 Network presentation.
I want to do a TED Talk, but I don't have anything to talk about yet. I'm getting there.
Life is for the living. We're not here that long.
You can learn anything you want to learn without any money spent.
What do I really enjoy? What do I really want out of life?
I am your host, WIZE.
Are you in a life holding pattern? Well, this is for you. Welcome to the Stuck in My Mind podcast. Live every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central. Football, and more football, you say? Well, tune in to Total Football Talk. Join your hosts, Drew Willingham.
You were playing like a dumpster Pelican quarterback.
And Cole Johnson.
It sets up a possible play action. Did you hear that, Dak Prescott?
As they take you through all the paces, both on the field and in the boardroom, of Total Football Talk. Every Tuesday at
9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central.
Exclusively on the Sertoba Media and the Comey Media Incorporated YouTube channel.
Well, welcome back to Total Football Talk. Oh, well, there you go. Sorry about that. With Drew Willingham, I am Cole Johnson. Oh, I saw a fist. Without Drew Willingham,
I had to give a little shout out to Sick Diggy there in the comments there as he threw me some love for the nice of the Bray Wyatt. As
right behind you. Yeah.
This right here I got in December during my trip to Philly. As you can see, he's got the world in his hands with with that. The guy was selling this for like $120. I came to him at the end of the show, said I wanted to buy it. I only had like $60 in my pocket, and he sold it to me for $60 because of the Bray Wyatt fan. And I told him about the story of me driving like 4.5 hours earlier that day just to come to that show that night. So he hooked me up with the deal. This is the story of the Bray Wyatt picture. The painting that the guy, I'll have to drop the link to his Instagram in the comments at some point because he does all wrestlers of all kinds, but the detail in this, man, like the detail is just it's awesome. Like I love this. I love this picture. So great painting.
Yeah, it is a great painting. It's so good it almost looks like a picture. Wow.
Yeah.
That is nice. That is nice. Well, with that being said, I can only think of one word to say before we do go into the chopping block. Run! And definitely rest in peace in heaven, Wyndham Rotunda. So, the NFL is going to be wanting to itch to cut players in the coming weeks. Players like the offensive tackle for the Cardinals, DJ Humphries, the cornerback of the Bills, Tre'Davious White, running back for the Bengals, Joe Mixon, Michael Gallup, the wide receiver for the Cowboys, offensive tackle, the Jaguars, Cam Robinson, Packers offensive tackle, David Bakhtiari, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the Chiefs wide receiver, Hunter Renfrow, the wide receiver of the Raiders, Mike Williams, wide receiver of the Chargers, and the biggest name of them all, the Broncos quarterback, Russell Wilson. Now, out of all the names I've mentioned and probably names that I did not mention that probably is coming to your head, sir, who do you think is in the most trouble of being cut?
That's a really good question. Russell Wilson's like the most obvious pick of being either cut or traded because of what they did to end the season this past year. Definitely was a very, very down. I wouldn't say a down year, but it's kind of surprising towards the end for them to let him be on the bench because they were starting to climb back, and but for the amount of money he was guaranteed, it makes sense. Besides him, I would say some other surprise ones that I would have to throw out there would be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back of the Chiefs, would be another one that I would think of because, the Kansas City Chiefs declined his fifth-year option, which would have been worth roughly $5.5 million in 2024. He missed 7 games in each of the last 2 seasons and was a healthy and active for the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. So healthy and active, that's a big difference because he actually could have participated. And yeah, he was there in this past Super Bowl this year against the 49ers, but he didn't really equate to much. It wasn't like he was when he first started off in the beginning of his career in that first Super Bowl win that they had. I mean, he's definitely, in the past 5 years, has definitely nosedive. I'd have to say, besides Russell Wilson and Jamal Williams, I'd have to say Clyde Edwards-Helaire is another one. On top of that, I'd say Chase Roullier, the center from the Washington Commanders. He is the most dependable of starters from 2018 to 2020. But, in back-to-back years, he's dealt with unfortunate injuries in 2021 and 2022. And it just seems like the team is poised to move in a different direction. I don't see him coming back as a center for the Commanders either. Those are the ones I think are the most trouble of being cut right there. But another one is some of you are probably going to look at me with the rocks people's eyebrow when I say this. But another one that I'm looking at here is Patrick Queen for the Ravens. When it comes to Patrick Queen, before the draft, there was chatter building that Patrick Queen was growing frustrated with the Baltimore Ravens. The team went to draft Clemson linebacker Trenton Simpson in the 3rd round. And Queen reacted on Twitter, and they declined Queen's 5th-year option for the 2024 season. So that could be speaking volumes right there that they're going to either get ready to trade him because, they don't have much time left if they're going to be making the decision or not, or they're going to be giving him a contract extension. But at the same time, when you make that move that you made in the 3rd round of the previous draft, he's already had voices of frustration. The team around him is actually playing really well to where if he was a piece that was discarded, whether via trade or cut, it wouldn't impact the defense as much as if to say Lamar Jackson wasn't re-signed last offseason. So looking at this, I would say that Patrick Queen would be another one on that list as someone who could potentially be cut or traded within the coming weeks to months. You also got to look at in Tennessee, with the way things ended with Ryan Tannehill this past year, they drafted what they thought was going to be his heir apparent a couple of years prior with Malik Willis. And Malik Willis definitely not seen the light of day as a quarterback and not produced well when it comes to the preseason. So he was unwilling to basically be converted to a wide receiver. So as a quarterback, I feel like he has a good chance to get relieved of his duties this year because they traded up to the second round to take him. They drafted up in the past draft. They up and they drafted Kentucky quarterback Will Levis. Leaving Malik Willis, the Tennessee third-round pick from the previous year, in a tough spot. So what's the point of having Willis and Levis, especially when they're going to be moving on from Tannehill? So when I think about all that, Malik Willis is another one that could potentially be cut or traded. And the last one that I'm going to review here is someone that I would not be surprised who is cut or traded in the upcoming weeks, who is in the most trouble of getting cut, would be Corey Davis, the wide receiver of the New York Jets. He has been a potential cut or trade candidate all offseason, even going into back the previous offseason. But the New York Jets have held on to him. And Robert Saleh said late in March last year that Davis would be part of the team in 2023. But here's the thing. The Jets have Garrett Wilson and signed Alan Lazard, McCole Hardman, and just recently Randall Cobb. And they traded McCole Hardman last year. So when you think about all of those right there, and the fact that they'd save $10.5 million against the cap if they let him go, why don't you let him go? So right there, those are my biggest moves that can be made during this upcoming offseason.
Those are great points, and I do agree with you. I think the most obvious one is Russell Wilson. I don't see him staying there much too longer. And I actually think that you might see the Steelers target him. But yeah, I would probably throw Joe Mixon in the mix, although I think the Bengals could still use him. For some reason, I think it's a chemistry miss. Not saying that Mixon's a bad apple, but seemingly I think his style of running seems to not fit with the style of offense that Zach Taylor wants his team to run. And I think that could be problematic. I think that fit just isn't quite there. So not saying this would be the most jaw-dropping one, but I could see those two parting ways too. But yeah, definitely, I agree with your assessment on Russell Wilson, probably the most obvious choice of them all. No question about that. None whatsoever.
Von Miller's another one. With him getting up there in age, could he try to come back? He was already talking about retirement potentially after last season, but then he got hurt. So he came back this year to try to right the wrongs. We already know the story of the Bills and the offensive woes that kind of held that team back this year. And then what's to expect for next year? We could see potentially Von Miller getting cut. You also got Amari Cooper as well with his cap hits as well. It's going to be interesting to see who actually gets cut or traded, dice it up however you want. It's going to be interesting to see how things pan out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point about Von Miller. Yeah. Double especially had issues off the field too that may tend to want to have the Bills want to distance themselves from him too. But yeah, good points all of them.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Now, bail was set at $5,000 Monday for former NFL star and corner and safety Richard Sherman following his weekend bender arrest for suspicion of driving under the influence. Sherman was pulled over just before 2 a.m. Saturday for driving 79 in the 60 in 405 south of Seattle. Washington State Patrol pulled him over and wrote in a probable cause statement saying his eyes were bloodshot and watery. He smelled of intoxicants and he declined to take a breath test. That is what the trooper wrote. After spending the weekend in King County Jail in Seattle, Sherman waived his right to appear at a bail hearing Monday, and his bail was then set at $5,000. His attorney said that he expected Sherman to be processed and released quickly. My question to you, sir, about this is, does Richard Sherman seem to have a problem adjusting to life away from the field?
It appears as such, because when you are getting intoxicated, for one, but then getting behind the wheel and driving nearly 20 miles over the speed limit, it's like a cry for help in one way or another. And, I would, if you would have to say that maybe his gig as an NFL commentator or whatnot is definitely not giving him the same feeling that he was getting when he was playing NFL football, and especially given the fact that he is not looked as a heavy hitter, because, looking at what he's doing, he's with Amazon Prime, isn't he? If I'm remembering right, when he comes to his coverage, it's not like he's Greg Olson on Fox, through this past season where he's the number one guy in play-by-plays, and of course going to be taken over by Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II Jr. But when it comes to that type of stat, when you have that type of position, it's going to be a lot easier for, say, Tom Brady to get that feeling that he used to get when he played football, because he's going to be able to dive in, dissect everything, and give all the X's and O's right there in his broadcast. Sherman is literally like an additionary piece, a complimentary piece to whoever else is on the panel, and isn't the number one spokesperson of that team. So who knows? Behind closed doors, he could be feeling some type of way because they don't get the A-list games each and every week. They're on Thursday nights, and the viewership there, is up and down depending on who is your game of the week that week for that selection for Thursday Night Football. So I think that plays into it. I think the fact that he's not out there in the grind of the week in and week out part of the NFL, I think he misses it. But, 5-6 years ago, his body just gave out on him to where he couldn't do those things anymore. Because the last time he was in the Super Bowl was the last time he played was when he was with the 49ers, and they were in the Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs the first time back in 2020. It was the 2019 season, but it was 2020. But, that was the last time we really saw relevance of Richard Sherman in the NFL on the highest stage. And from that moment, the fact that he lost there, then the previous time he was in the Super Bowl, the Legion of Boom lost, when they lost that game to the Patriots, when Russell Wilson threw that pass, when he should have ran the ball on the 1 yard line with Marshawn Lynch. And the way that he has spoken in interviews, it seems like he has nightmares about that game each and every night, because they were in it until the end right there. When the Chiefs played the 49ers the first time, it wasn't as close of a contest as, say, in this past game. So when the 49ers played in that Super Bowl, he was kind of just lucky to be there. He was along for the ride because the rest of the team got him to that point. And he was the Legion of Boom for that first Super Bowl they won, and in the second time they went and lost to the Patriots. They were some bad dudes over there. And I think that Super Bowl loss has haunted him to the point to where no matter if he's an NFL commentator, no matter what type of profession he was going to pick up, after he left the game of football, he was so emotionally invested into the game that there's nothing else out there that's going to be able to replace it. maybe a side of being a father and doing stuff within the family that may come close to the feelings that he was getting of, the heightened sense of greatness, of fun, and, the love and all that stuff that he felt from playing in football. But professionally, he's probably not happy right now. Generally, when people are drinking to the point to where, one, they're drinking and driving and getting pulled over, but two, you're refusing a breathalyzer, you must be pretty intoxicated. You must be pretty out of it to where you can't even have a conversation, let alone drive. So for him to not only refuse the breathalyzer, but to also refuse the what you had said, refuse the day in court, and as far as refusing to go in front of the judge, because his appearance was probably not like it was, not like we're used to seeing on TV, between his portrayal of himself as a commentator or as the character Richard Sherman, the player. He sat back there and took his lumps because he didn't want anybody to see how probably depressed he is. And at this time of the year, mental health is very serious because we're still in the winter. The days of the winter are almost over. But looking at how you can handle things in the wintertime, this is probably the most highest rate of depression happens at this point of the year. And I think that with everything I just said, given his change in his career, given the fact that it is trauma season, given the fact that there is so many things wrapped up into Richard Sherman's bow that can affect him on a day in and day out basis, him drinking and driving is the least of his worries right now, because he may not be employed with Amazon in his commentator role after something like this. It just goes to show that people don't appreciate the good things that they have in front of them, because there's probably thousands of former NFL players that wish that they were in Richard Sherman's shoes right now, getting the paycheck that he is just to talk football one day a week. And he might have just pissed it all away with what just happened this past weekend.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think further than that until you mentioned it, because I was like, yeah, he probably jeopardized his Amazon check. Oh, and he also, I think twice a week, appears on Undisputed, the Fox Sports One's vehicle with Skip Bayless. So those two vehicles definitely might be interrupted because Mr. Sherman has a problem not getting behind the wheel sober in his vehicle. Come on, brother. You got to do better than that, man. Jeez. And you raise a good point. I think and that's right. This reason why I asked the question. I think he's still trying to chase that high of being on the field, and I don't think he has replaced it yet. And it looks like being in front of the camera hasn't done it so far. And whew, man, I feel for him.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Oh, Six says, yeah, winter depression is no joke, especially up here in Scandinavia, even more so around certain holidays. And yes, the word that I believe my partner was looking for was inebriated.
Yeah, I was fumbling around for a second, but yeah, inebriated was what I was looking for.
Yeah, Sick Sick also says, yeah, doing a show with Skip Bayless will make anybody go see a counselor or therapist. That's a good one, man. That's a good one. Well, hopefully he's not seeing a therapist. Not talking about Richard Sherman. I hope he is. But I'm hoping this figure doesn't have to see one. But he is now hanging up his pen and pad. Legendary pro football columnist Peter King has announced his retirement from full-time writing. He brought the news to readers in his weekly Morning Football in America column for NBC Sports, calling himself similar to what Lou Gehrig did in his speech, quote, the luckiest man on the face of the earth, close quote. Now, he calls it quits after 44 years as a sports writer, Wow, going back to 1980. Okay. Covering the last 40 Super Bowls and writing his wiki column, which originally was called Monday Morning Quarterback, which it began at Sports Illustrated for the past 27 years. In his farewell column, King listed several factors that led to his decision to retire, amongst them his declining interest in the day-to-day news cycle, a desire to try something new, his unsuccessful attempts to scale back the scope of his 10,000-word columns, and a need to spend more time with his family. My question to you, really, I don't think has much to do with King, although I think we both have a lot of respect for him because he does have an interesting take on the world of football. But what does this retirement mean for sports journalism itself going forward?
All right, people.
Let me talk to you.
When it comes to this topic right here with Peter King, look at the last name right there. You got to look at the last name. When you have the last name of King, especially when you think of other writers out there like Stephen King, you got to think of how writer Stephen King is, okay? You sports world. This guy, Peter King, to be around as long as he has, it speaks volumes on his talent for him to be here as long as he has. Not just as a writer, but as a personality. Because, you know, I look back on his time when he was with Sunday Night Football in the 2000s. You know, was on the panel with like Bob Costas and Chris Collinsworth, Sterling Sharp, and Jerome Bettis. I mean, that's a pretty good lineup, minus Chris Collinsworth because he drives me nuts whenever I listen to him. But hey,
now here's a guy. Oh, my bad.
But when you think about Peter King, definitely, you know, threw some great pieces out there that, you know, like you said, respectful work that he has done. A lot of his work, you go back, you know, he's around this turn of the century, in this millennium, from the 2000s on to now, Peter King has been pretty relevant.
Yeah.
Not to say that he was irrelevant in the 80s and 90s, but, you know, unless you were reading Sports Illustrated, the magazine, you really didn't know who Peter King was back in the 80s and 90s. It was more so 2000s when he became more prevalent on TV. But his journalism was up there. It was like he was part of the group of sports writers that set the bar in this millennium. Not talking about overall journalism, you know, for the past 100 years of sports or so, but for this new millennium, setting the bar for journalism, because he's not the type of person that's been putting out a lot of fake news and stuff like that to get clicks and get clickbait. He was more old school, where the overall quality of the article was what he cared about, and making sure he got the right context of what he was trying to convey out to his readers out, but be truthful as much as possible as well. There's too much people out there nowadays that are trying to throw some quick words out there for some clickbait, just to get more likes, just to get more follows and subscribes, whatever the platform may be. Peter King, 66 years old, was part of the, you know, the baby boomer generation, the last generation of pure sports writers who would put an article out there for the general reader rather than for today's society that's all about like, sharing, and subscribing. So when I think about Peter King, I think that there's not going to be many more sports writers out there, columnists, journalists out there that are like him and like the rest of his peers from his era, like, say, Peter Gammons or John Clayton. You know, there's not many others floating around anymore. So, you know, for what it means for journalism going forward, it means that there's a shift. It's like the tip of the iceberg. It's not going to completely change the game with him retiring, but it is going to make an impact. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, and I've been a huge fan of Peter King. The written word and as a personality. That's a really good point. People focus on his columns, which of course you should, but he definitely had a real hardcore presence in front of the camera, definitely as of the last 20 years. And he would be missed. And I think sports journalism is going to be good. And I think he sort of reflected the change of, I think, what we're going to see in sports journalism. I think we're going to see more like of us, guys who our personalities get on a mic and get in front of a camera to actually say our takes and have more and more people respect if we do clock in, day out, week in, week out, and have the understanding of, okay, this guy or these guys know what they're talking about. I trust them. I'm building a relationship with them. And I find what they have to say interesting. And I find his viewpoints to align a lot with what I'm about. And I think we're starting to see more and more the trend of sports journalism going in that vein. That being, you got to be more of a personality than just jump behind a typewriter and clicking out words. But I don't think that's dead. I just think it's a shift considering the changing of the times. But kudos to you, Peter. You deserve this retirement. You deserve to have the lap around the field, so to speak. You are one of the best to ever do it. And I grew up respecting you, firstly, amongst many others in the field. So definitely, I hope things are good with you in retirement.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
I liked my rant on Stephen King.
Stephen King. Are they related? I don't know. I don't know if they are. I doubt if they are, but hey, you never know. But one person who seems to be having a little trouble in retirement, that would be one Cameron Jarrell Newton.
Oh, no, the Jarrell is now brought out. This is serious.
Now, a video surfaced Sunday that appears to show the 2015 NFL MVP involved in a scuffle at a 7-on-7 youth tournament in the ATL. It seems to show Newton wearing one of his custom-made hats being shoved by three people near the top of a set of steps before the pushing, shoving, and grabbing moves toward a fence line. The video lasts less than 30 seconds before the altercation is broken up by a police officer and event security personnel at the We Ball Sports times Dynasty U 7-on-7 tournament at the BEST Academy. Not to be confused with the EST of WWE and Bianca Belair. Again, I digress. Newton, the number one pick in the 2011 Newton, the number one pick in the 2011 NFL draft out of Auburn, does not appear to throw any punches in the video and seems to be fending off three people in the process. But there is one punch thrown in his direction, but it's unclear if it landed on the former quarterback or not. But it's also uncertain what prompted the altercation. Newton, who also is from Atlanta, he runs the C1N organization and was founded 3 years ago, and it focuses on developing young athletes' skills in football, providing opportunities to compete at the highest level through 7-on-7 tournaments and other events, according to Newton's website. My question to you about all of this is the following. Why are people trying to test Cam Newton's fight game?
I think that Cam has set himself up for this in some aspects that I'll cover here while going over this. But before I do that, I at least have to give him some flowers for what he does to give back to the community. I mean, he's holding football camps to try to elevate the overall talents of the youth out there who want to improve their game of football. So for that, much respect to Cam Newton. I don't want to throw any shade at that right there. I want to get that clear before I go much further into my take. However, his behavior at said camps, whether it's his own or other camps that could be held by high school teams or college teams that he has attended. You and I have discussed it before about his immaturity at some of these camps in the past, especially the one where, he was doing the little thing right down next to his genitalia in front of a kid or whatever, like in a video. It's like when you're doing things like that, you are someone with fame. You are the Cam Newton. You are the Cam Newton. Like, you are in the flesh in front of people. So, you are a celebrity when you're in front of these kids, and you have to set an example. So if just because what you did was on a different day doesn't mean there's not going to be repercussions for that on a different day. And that could be what part of what we just witnessed in this past week is from. And that's something that not enough coverage has been discussed about when I've been watching other people cover this topic right here. They're trying to paint Cam as the victim in some aspects here, but I think that some of his behavior leading up to the day is what kind of sparked this from the other side, because it is not new news that this was something that potentially was happening in the past with other camps where Cam was popping off at the mouth, whether he's defending something for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. Cam has put his foot in his mouth in many different ways, whether it's at football camps with the youth, whether it's calling out what he thinks are game managers in certain aspects when it comes to certain current talent in the NFL. And even though Cam does have a little bit more of a validation to speak because of the quarterback position, because he played it in the NFL, the way that he exited the NFL, I feel like he doesn't have the right to really speak about quarterbacks as game managers, because after a certain point when he couldn't use his legs, he lost the ability to manage a game. So looking at everything as a whole here, between his behavior, between the results of his play in the NFL, the consequences of his play, both on and off the field, we can at least sum it up as that. I think that's what the reason for what happened in this past week. It's unfortunate, but until Cam really gets a hold on how to control Cam, we could see this potentially happen again. So it's unfortunate, but he's gotten himself in the middle of a debacle here.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with that, and it's a great assessment. And yeah, definitely, shout out to Cam for actually putting forth camps to have burgeoning pro athletes before they actually even get into the high school realm and the high school realm to better themselves before they get up beyond that age. But yes, I agree. I think his personal maturity level definitely with these camps, I think it needs to be a little bit more elevated, because I think I get it. I think to relate to the youth, the youths. Thank you, Joe Pesci. To relate to the youths, he seems to want to sort of. This sounds really harsh in saying it this way, but I'll say it in the way this is intended. Dumb down his maturity level to that age range, and I think that makes him an easy target. I 100% agree with you there. And I think he has to learn going forward that he has to stand on the fact that he is a celebrity. He is an adult, and he is a man, and he would be more respected if he stands on that instead of attempting being childlike but being childish in his actions. But definitely most of all, thanks to we are talking about Cam and not Tam or hit him, man, hit him.
Delete. No matter which way you paraphrase it or sum it up, to be compared to Tyrone Alizé McDummy. You, Cam Newton, take the... We are officially and for those of you out there saying this,
Stop it. Get some help.
please, with all due respect,
You should know your role and shut your mouth. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh Lord, Tyrone Alizé McDummy.
it's probably the best thing that happened in this show. We had some great moments in today's episode.
We did.
But my favorite one, out of all the randomness that has come out of my mouth in the time that I've spent on the interwebs and these streams over the years, that's in the top 5. That's in the top 5 of random things that's come out of my mouth.
Tyrone Alizé McDummy. That is great. Oh my gosh. 6 says, look, Cam has to understand that as a celebrity, he will be targeted by certain people. No question. Everyone is looking for a lawsuit to file. Yeah, isn't that the truth? Oh, and he also says, new news. Why do you gotta bring in the Kelseys in this mess? Well, he didn't mention Taylor Swift. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Stop it. Get some help.
Yeah, Mike, I will. He also says Cam Newton has a sense of entitlement and arrogance in him and to him. You made the Super Bowl, but never won it, fool. Yeah, and he decided to make a business decision in that game, which cost him the game. But again, I digress. Ike says, I agree with Sick on the Kelseys. Oh, Lord. New news. Cam Newton will be opening his own slap boxing academy. New news. I meant to say. Oh, you meant to say this.
That was a lie.
Oh, Lord. And that completes this segment of
You know, there's this transition that I have not seen you play in quite some time. We have never had it on the Total Football Talk, and for reasons we've never really completely shifted that far off the rails. But the one from Snowman in the Morning where it pans to like the island or whatever, like and all that's another great one. Yeah, you know, I just had that in my mind at some point of like seeing that. But to keep it going, the streak cannot end when it comes to talking about a list such as this.
Dumpster Pelican list. Oh, Lord.
And since our final topic on the chopping block has to deal with Cam Newton, I would have to say that for our Dumpster Pelican pick of the week, the number one Dumpster Pelican on this list is Cam Newton, a person that at one point I called Spam Newton because it was more like watching spam hit your mailbox and affecting it in a negative way. That is what watching the Carolina Panthers was like for the last few seasons of his career in Carolina. Spam Newton.
Lord, Spam Newton. Goodness gracious.
Delete! 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 Delete!
I forgot to click the loop off.
Spam Newton. Goodness gracious.
Now, that is absurd.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rick. That's one of the two truest things you've ever said in life.
Well,
that and cocaine's a drug.
Acknowledge me.
Oh my gosh. Goodness.
I think I got my swagger back. Oh.
There's probably some people watching this show right now that are wondering this.
What
happened over the last 5 minutes?
It really is a simple case of
who's giving them the business?
Yes, it really does.
My gosh. Goodness gracious. Wow.
Total football talk.
As long as it's one. That's great. I love it.
And from having Cam Newton be 32 Pelicans to the post game, I know it's time to end the show, but before we do, we'll give our final thoughts as to this episode. And Drew, the floor is yours.
Well, it has definitely been another great episode. 26 of these are in the books now. And the fact that NFL season's been over, but we still have plenty to talk about. We have the UFL coming up soon. I mean, guys, this is our last episode in February, but coming up on March 30th is the kickoff for the UFL as the USFL and XFL champions, the Birmingham Stallions and the Arlington Renegades, go face to face on March 30th. So, hey, for someone who loves the game of football, as shown here on my half sleeve tattoo, I have a football somewhere in there, right there. There it is. Yes, I love football, whether it's spring, NFL, anything. We've got UFL coming up. We've got the CFL coming up, and it's going to be, some great things that we're going to have to talk about soon. We were halfway through our grades for the 2023 season. Then we've got the UFL and some things to talk about there. With all that being said, there's some hype in certain areas that we'll definitely get to over the course of the upcoming weeks. And I'm looking forward to talking about it with my man Cole Johnson here. For those of you watching on all of our platforms, Comey Media, Sertoba Media, thank you very much for tuning in for the past 3.5 hours. If you're watching, no matter which platform you're watching on, whether it's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, you name it, if you could do us a favor, whichever platform you're watching this on, click that like button, click that share button if you wouldn't mind. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the platforms to help us out there with driving the analytics to help us with increasing viewership on a weekly basis as much as we possibly can. And speaking of viewership, yesterday, Sertoba Media had the one-off episode for February for the Commander's Gridiron Report. You can check that out on Sertoba Media platforms as well as Team MBS Media and A7BN Sports. And this Sunday, Cole showed you the graphic earlier, but I'm going to show it to you again as D. Willie in the Evening returns this Sunday night.
Evening.
Yes, he does it so much better than I do. Begins this Sunday at 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time for Season Mother Fathering 2. And I'm working on a promo. I'm working on it. It doesn't sound as good as Cole's voice, but I'm trying. If he feels like sneaking a voiceover in there, I might send him the text at some point today. If he feels like sneaking it in there, because what I wrote this time, I feel like it's actually gold. And the transitions that I have with it, I cannot wait to show them to you in 2 days. If I have to use my voice, I will. But hey, look here on Sunday. We're going to have a great episode for you as the shenanigans are back in full blast this Sunday night live. Normally on Thursdays, but since football is over, got to find a filler on this date. Going to bring it back on Sunday nights. But this day, Tuesday, still remains my favorite day of the week for multiple reasons. One, get to hang out with my man Cole Johnson here on the interwebs and talk. And we get to talk about something that we both love, and that is the game of football. And the fact that you've got so many other networks, so many other platforms, journalists alike that aren't even talking football right now. That just goes to show how much we love the game and love producing content together, which is why we're still weeks after the Super Bowl, still talking about football on a weekly basis. But the positive part is we have other leagues within the game of football that we'll be breaking down here soon. So if you're not a fan of the UFL already or the CFL, our goal over the upcoming months in the spring and summer is to make you a fan of these leagues, because the knowledge that we're going to come to these shows with each and every week is much in preparation to give you is the knowledge that you need to know about the leagues at hand. NFL, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of coverage between ESPN, NFL, CBS, NBC, etc. But the one thing that my goal is, and I know Cole has got my back on this one too, is to improve the coverage of the other leagues alike, where in comparison to professional wrestling, you have WWE with AEW as, the minor leagues part, the lower level, somewhat of a feeder system in a way, but at the same time, it's established itself as its own identity. And somewhat, even though it's not on the level of competition as WWE, it does make it interesting. There's some type of competition in a way. And that's what we have with the UFL and, of course, the CFL, which is what we've had for decades. But because of the time frame in which it's played in, it doesn't really have as much effect on the game of football within the NFL. So the UFL being 6-7 weeks removed from the NFL's time playing the time frame, we're gonna have a separate entity of that this year, similar to last year, but now we have two leagues formed into one, very similar to what we saw in the mid-60s when the AFL and the NFL merged to what we know now as the NFL with the AFC conference and the NFC conference within the NFL. Now we have the same thing going on with the UFL, with the XFL and USFL divisions. So I'm really excited. I know it's long-winded, but I know I'm really excited to see how this plays out this year, the type of talent that they have, reviewing it all before the start of the season, during, and the playoff run for this upcoming league known as the lazily formed UFL, as they just took the S out of the United States Football League and made it United Football League. I will forever say until my dying day that they should have changed it to the Ultimate Football League, because I just like it. UFL, it sounds really good. But either way, I'm just looking forward to having a fun rest of the year with you guys, with my man Cole Johnson, each and every week, providing the fire for you together out here on these streams.
All right. Well, hey, the way you put it, it saves me a lot of what I had to say. But thank you, sir. But yes, I back all of what you said there. Yeah, because one thing that I do want to provide is, or us to provide, is more coverage to the other leagues. Hopefully, the way the NFL gets covered too, and it's outlets like us that has to do it. So I agree with you there. So the combine is this week and early next week. And then we have the free agency period in the NFL coming up in 3 weeks.
Yep.
You would think that, the excitement of football is over, but the one thing that the NFL seems to do better than I think any other league is they do their best to stay relevant all year long. And I think they've had practice in doing so, because they tried to do this starting in the 80s, and it didn't work so well, because we were all enthralled in basketball when it came to the spring, or the latter part of winter and the spring, and then baseball in the summer and the early part of the fall. But when the the product of baseball started to wane in popularity in the 90s, and then when basketball started to wane in popularity in the 2000s, then the NFL took advantage of that. And now we have a league where it doesn't sound so funny to talk about anything NFL during the offseason. And we just actually had a whole show during the offseason where we talked about nothing but NFL. It's a credit to the game. It's a credit to the people who run it. And we could talk ill about NFL altogether, but quite frankly, you just got to tip your cap to excellence. And right now, they are the product in sports throughout North America, and everybody is shooting to be that North Star. So I'll just give props where it's due, and I'll give the credit where it's due. Thank you, NFL, for giving us entertainment, even when it is not September through middle of February. It definitely is a sign as to the health of the league, and because you want to dip your hands in so many other things, the UFL being one of them, it also shows the game is healthy, thanks to you. And for the many things that you all don't do right, that is the one thing you definitely do right. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing us do the UFL coverage starting in late March. Well, games late March, but we'll probably cover the league a little bit before then. And then the CFL starting in the summer, and then we'll get back to the NFL in the fall. But we're thankful that we have the game that we love give us entertainment 12 months out the year. Man, football's incredible.
As long as it's one. Oh, it's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
Well, any final words, sir, before we let the Total Football Talk tribe go?
Another great episode. Definitely looking forward to next Tuesday already. The time flew by today. Big shout out to Sick Diggy, Ike, Mickey Delaney, Brian McCoffey, and Victor Locke. All of you who commented throughout this show regularly to keep things afloat, keep things interesting with us here in the comments. And those of you who all popped in for a short, quick turn, thank you as well. This wouldn't be possible without you guys. Definitely hope to improve the viewership at some point throughout 2024. We wouldn't be where we're at without you. So hopefully we can keep on trucking along, and look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday, same time.
Keep on, Lord. Keep on trucking, baby. Gonna keep on trucking. I got to get the yoke of loving. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Well, as I was saying, if to reach one Mr. Drew Willingham on social media, you can find him on many different places. Sotoba_media on Instagram, Sotoba_media on Twitter, /X, and the _Sotoba, I'm sorry, on TikTok.
I gotta get my flow code.
To reach me, all you have to do is go on to flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson. That is flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson. Oh, you're too funny.
For those of you who are watching this show right now or seeing it post-production, could you hit me up on Sunday and say, get on that flow code? Wow. Just Sunday, hit me up. So that way I do not forget. Do it.
Oh my goodness.
Do it, please.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Oh Lord, with that being said, thank you for liking, thank you for sharing, thank you for subscribing, and thank you for hitting that notification bell so you can catch content just like this that emanates from the Sotoba Media YouTube channel and or the Comey Media YouTube channel as well. For Drew Willingham, I'm Cole Johnson, here to say in parting, as we always do, in life, just like a tackle, keep your head up. And always remember, you got to play until the whistle blows.
And as always, stay safe out here in these streams.
And stay safe out there on these streets. So long, everybody.